Welcome to a Sunday afternoon, a stormy Sunday afternoon here in Colorado. And yeah, afternoon in the studio after being out of town for quite a while. So welcome. Yeah, so today is kind of going to be a different format. This isn't going to be a teach everybody how to do stuff or walk through a certain thing. I've been getting a ton of questions lately, all across the board, from gear to, who knows, gear to everything. And yeah, and I wanted to get a chance to answer those all together. I haven't done an Ask Me Anything in a while, so yes, feel free to ask me anything. Put those questions in the chat. Let me know where you're chatting from, where you're tuning in from. And I do have the camera set up so I can show stuff if there's something that you really want to see. But for the most part, this is kind of a let's hang out and chat, have a little afternoon nerd fest discussion. There's been a lot going on lately between Knobcon and some new gear being actually released and some being teased out and all that stuff. So I would love to chat about any of that stuff that you guys would like to chat about. So definitely pop any questions that you have into the chat and we will, we'll try to get to all of them. So I have the chat right here in front of me. So I'm going to try to get through everything here. But anyway, welcome and glad to have you here. Before we get started too, I just want to do one quick sponsorship thing. This is sponsored by my online courses that I teach. Today's the last day before we get started with the September session. The first call is tomorrow. So if you'd like to sign up, go to circolive.com/courses and you can sign up for the Improvised live performance course September session. It's a month long, but all kinds of stuff, 50 videos and online community and critique of your live performances and all sorts of stuff. Lots of live interactive chat and Zoom calls and things so you can really get all your questions answered. So if you're interested in that, definitely sign up today. There's a discount on the website. So if you go to circolive.com/courses, you can get signed up there. So anyway, that's my shameless plug for my online course. So if you have questions, pop them into the chat and I will do my best to jump right in on those. So it looks like Wabbit getting in first. Good to see you, man. He said, EasyBot stated that Toneberg would complement Modular to make the sounds into a polyphonic instrument. As someone who uses Modular, do you agree and or see any value in your workflow for live performing? So I unfortunately have not used the Toneberg yet. I was not part of the cool kids that got to get one ahead of time, unfortunately. But I am waiting to receive one. So I will let you know my thoughts. I'm actually very excited about it. I'm sure we'll talk more about the Toneberg as we go on today because it's kind of the hot topic right now. But just as kind of a hot take on it, one thing I've noticed, and it's, I think it happens a lot from Elektron just because they're, easy target because it's a big company, but anybody who comes out with something new, particularly these bigger companies, the knee-jerk reaction is this doesn't do the one thing I wished it did, or it doesn't do these things that I wished it did. And so therefore it's awful, or it's bad, or it's a waste of time, where they're trying to scam me for money or whatever. And I would just challenge everybody, look at these things as maybe this is something that will change the way you do music, that will change the way you look at things. So anytime something new comes out, I know myself personally, one of the things I always look at is I try to look beyond the top 2 or 3 things that everybody gets talking about with it. And I say, okay, how will I use this? What is something different and unique? And so, for example, for me, one of the cool things that I noticed on it that I thought was very interesting is the idea of subtracks. So it's got 8 tracks, but every track can have 8 subtracks. And those are basically one-shot tracks. So it's like drums, percussion, or all sorts of other things that you could use those for. They each have their own filters and their own modulation and all sort of that. So, instead of having 8 tracks, you could in effect have 64 tracks, which is if you wanted them all to be one shots. Now you can't play those chromatically, but thinking for myself, I do a lot of percussive stuff when I perform live, and a lot of tonal percussion, a lot of kind of, impacts or industrial sounds or things like that. So having multiple kits of really interesting and diverse percussion at your fingertips at the same time without having to use up all your tracks to do those is, I think, very interesting. If you were to just compare that to the Digitact has 16 channels, 16 tracks. If you were going to use it for drums and percussion and not for all the other things that you could, of course, use it for, you've basically, if you were going to use the Tonverk the same way, instead of having 16 tracks, you would have 64 tracks of one-shots and hits and different kits and all sorts of things. So for me, that's very interesting. Another thing that I think is really interesting is all of the effects and the effects routing. I think that it doesn't work exactly the same way as the Octatrack with effects, but just being able to have multiple effects per track via buses and sends, plus your kind of traditional sends, so you can layer effects, I think is a really interesting thing that's going to open up a ton of stuff for performance, for me, at least personally. So I'm looking forward to trying that. I love the idea of auto sampling and the way the auto multi-sampling, I should say, and the way that they have that set up in order to enable to be an automatic thing where you can set how many notes you want to sample and how many different velocity levels you want to sample, and then you can then press play and as it were said, then go have a coffee, because it takes, it can take 5 minutes or so to do a full complete multi-sample. But then you've got this cool multi-sample of anything. So if you've got a lot of gear in your studio that you would love to take out and perform with, but you can't, that was one of the reasons why I sold my Polybrute, is because I just wasn't using it, because I couldn't take it with me. It was difficult to know exactly what I wanted to sample and how I was going to use it. Well, I wished I still had it now, because at least for one more day, because with this machine, I could take a couple of my favorite patches that I created over the years and create these really interesting multi-samples with a lot of different velocity settings, because the velocity on the Polybrute changes dramatically how it sounds. And so being able to do that is really interesting. And so that's another thing that I'm excited about. And then one thing, I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, which kind of surprises me, is that the Toneberg has 4 separate outputs that are signable. And so you could have buses that you create and assign the buses to different outputs, and then process those outputs differently between that and your mixer. And you could do really high quality sounding, very high level, like multi-bus processing in a live setup, which is difficult with a lot of devices. I mean, there are some, the Roland drum machines have multiple outs, and the Analog Rhythm has multiple outs, but to have something like this, that's another big plus, especially when you're talking about the different types of effects that it has. So I think there's a lot to like here, and that's why I'm excited to give it a try. But we'll see. I mean, I'll try it. If I don't like it, I'll tell you guys that I don't like it. But I think it's very interesting. And I heard a lot of people say, oh, it's just recycling their old stuff. And I'm like, I don't see that at all. I've said a lot of times over the years that first and foremost, Elektron is a sequencer company. That's what they do. They make a very specific, very useful, I think, amazing sequencer with that workflow. And then they attach different things to the sequencer. And so if you're a sample person, you have the Digitact attached to that sequencer. If you want, analog and digital synthesis, well, then you've got the Syntact attached to that sequencer. If you want FM synthesis, you've got the D-Tone attached to that sequencer. So first and foremost, they're a sequencer company. And so what they did here was polyphonic multi-sampling, polyphonic multi-sampler and multiplayer attached to their sequencer. And also all of those different effects also attached to the sequencer. So I think it's I think it is something new, even though everybody's kind of trying to rip on it that it's not. It's not a new Octatrack. I don't think that's what they were trying to do. So for everybody that says, well, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. Well, yeah, I mean, some of the greatest synths in the world, you know, the example I like to use is, you know, a Moog Sub 37 doesn't sample. That doesn't make it a bad synth. It just makes it not a sampler. And this thing doesn't do things that other machines do, whether in the Elektron line or out of the Elektron line. That doesn't make it bad. It just makes it its own thing. And it's up to us as artists to figure out how we're going to use it and what we want to do with it. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the Toneberg. Happy to chat about it more and debate if you want. But not really much worth debating because everybody's going to have their own opinion, but that's cool. All right, let's see. Do you have a modular grid page? I do. Let's see. What is it called? It is, yeah, if you just search, let me see here. What is it? Go to this one. Yeah, I think if you just search Circo, I think it would show up. Let me pull up my most recent one and see if there's a link to that. No. All right, I'll put a link in the in the comments down here so you guys can take a look at that. So yes, I do have a modular grid. I tend to only have public on the modular grid, the my most current stuff, and so that way as I'm changing things and working on things, I'll update it, so you'll see some of that stuff. So yes, definitely check that out. What's up, James? Good to see ya. Hello, everybody. Hamburg, Germany, awesome. Norway, awesome as well. Stefan, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for tuning in for it. Glad that you're here for it. Irishman in Cologne. Nice. UK. Iceland. Love that. All right. More Ireland. Sweden. You're going to hear about my experience with the Noiseite drop. So the Noiseite drop is an interesting thing. It is not a secret. Obviously, he premiered it at Superbooth, and Sonic State did a whole thing about it. So you can check that out and see what it does. What we're trying to do is all of us are kind of finalizing everything with final software and the beta testing process, getting it to where we want to do it, and then when he does, kind of officially release it as available to everybody, then a bunch of us are going to do content on it and kind of what we think about it and stuff. But yeah, I've just been testing it, using it over time. So my experience has been, if I had to sum up the experience with the Noiseite drop, I would say 2 things about it. It is, amazingly capable and does things that like no other MIDI controller I've ever seen does, which is amazing. Like the flexibility and just the capability of what it can do is crazy. Like it's amazing. On the flip side of that, I will say, because of how deep it is and all the things it can do, it is very time consuming and in depth and kind of a bit complex to set up initially. But one thing I love about it, and Thomas at Noiseite is really great about this. He did this with his drop, with his warp module for modular, as well as a couple of his other things, is he has this idea of like 2 different workflows. One workflow is the studio workflow, which is your setup workflow. And then there's a performance workflow. So the setup part is often very complex and in depth because he creates these amazingly deep machines. And then you've got a performance workflow. Once it's set up, then you don't have to think about any of the menus, you don't have to dive into anything, and you're good. So I personally really like that. It's very Octatrack-esque for me. Not in its convoluted workflow, but with the Octatrack, if you put the time in to set it up at the beginning and get it set exactly the way you want. When you play it live, it's really super hands-on and immediate and fast, and you don't have to menu dive, and it's great. And if you don't take the time, then you're constantly going into menus and changing, and it doesn't really work. And I think all of the Noiseite devices for me are very much the same. If you put in the time to set them up at the beginning, it pays off in the long run. And so having all of the capabilities that the drop has, which I'm happy to go into if you guys want to go into the spec sheet, I'm happy to do that. But going into all those things, it's in order to have something that deep, there's going to be a certain amount of kind of setup time and, you know, complexity to it. But so far I'm loving it. I think it's amazing. I'm only scratching the surface with it, but I'm trying to figure out all that it can do so that I can help explain it to everybody else. So let's see here. The Oxy MIDI controller looks cool. Curious how it compares to the others. Yeah, I think it looks cool too. It's funny, Manuel kind of teased that to me about, I don't want to say almost a year ago now, that he was working on this thing. And then I hadn't really heard much about it because all of us had been working on the MK2 of the Oxy One and all that stuff. And then when I saw in Ura's video the other day for the Toneberg, he had it, and I was like, oh, cool, now it's the thing. And it's very cool in that, similarly to the drop and to the top section of the drop where you have all the knobs, it seems like everything in I think it's the E16 is the Oxy thing. It's set up to be macros, and so that you can kind of really have a lot of fine control over the macros, and then you can save scenes, and that's very much what the drop does. The drop does it with more knobs and also with faders, and has a ton of I/O. So it's a bit more in depth. The Oxy one seems amazing because it's tiny. And if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you know that I'm all about portability with gear, trying to get stuff as you know, small and portable as possible. So I'm excited. I haven't tried it yet. I haven't gotten my hands on it. Hopefully I will soon. And again, when I do, happy to let you know about it. But yeah, it looks very, very cool. It's again, the whole thing, and you see with the Oxy and with the drop, there's a movement towards macro controllers, which I think is very cool, because if you have a lot of gear in your setup, being able to again streamline the workflow for live performance, I think is great. So if you can focus that through controllers for devices like the Elektrons, where there are a lot of menus and there's a lot of parameters, a lot of things you can control, being able to have all of that controlled from an external controller in a macro format, I think is really interesting. So, so the drop is exactly that, and it seems that the E16 from Oxy is also that. So, hey Jason, what's going on? Everyone wants to have a take. Yeah, I agree. Have you picked up any new modules recently? I have not. Well, I mean, the last thing I picked up recently was the Bohm from Ohmforce, that kind of kick drum system, and it's kind of been rocking my world. I have to tell you, it's so good, and even so much so that I was making a small case for something, and I made the room for it, even though it's huge, because it just dramatically changes the overall sound output. Just being able to fill things out, have, you know, ducking against your kick, and, you know, even if it's really subtle. So yeah, it's that's been the most recent one for sure. How was Knobcon? Knobcon was okay. I have to say, it was my, I felt like it was the least exciting Knobcon that I've been to. Not really a lot of new gear. The noise engineering, noise engineering, the Mimetic, the new one, was cool. It's a very, very interesting module. I think they did some stuff that was really smart with it, even if it seems like just on the surface. The fact they kept it the same size as the Mark I, and they're keeping the price really similar. So it's like it encourages people to just swap out the Mark I for the Mark II, which I think is cool because it fits into the same space in your case and it just expands a ton of the capability. So that one was cool. But yeah, I gotta say, there was the least amount of vendors. There was the least amount of kind of, you know, really interesting new stuff. So it was kind of, I don't know, kind of meh. It wasn't my favorite one, I have to say. But obviously Knobcon is always great, even if it's not a whole bunch of new vendors and big stuff, because you get to hang out with all the, you know, your friends and industry people and stuff. So I love Knobcon because everyone stays in the same hotel where the conference is. And so you just get time to spend time with people, which is for me the best part. You know, you have breakfast with people, you have dinner with people, you're hanging out and drinks around the bar, and it's way more of a social event. And I like that. I like the fact that it's not just like business, which is also why I love Superbooth. I think Superbooth takes that to the next level. Although in the evening at Superbooth, everybody kind of disappears into Berlin, which is crazy fun and we all have a great time. But you miss out that thing where everybody kind of hangs out together into the night, which is really cool about Knobcon. So I love that part about it. But from a gear standpoint, it was okay. It wasn't, you know, super special. I did see a cool new module from Weston that was a collaboration with Travarsi. That's very cool. It's a combination dual envelope VCA, everything in one thing, and it sounded great. The envelopes were really, really responsive. Travarsi is super anal retentive about the sound of her envelopes in her case anyway. So as soon as I saw that she had done this with them, I was like, oh, the envelopes are gonna sound really good. And they did, they sounded fantastic. So that'll be worth checking out once it's out. I think they posted some stuff on their social media about it, so you can take a look, but it's not out yet. Let's see here. EasyBot's Toneberg stream was awesome. Would be stoked to hear your perspective when you get your hands on one. Yeah, I'll definitely do one as soon as I get my hands on it. So I will let you know. It should be another couple of weeks, but I will let you guys know. But yeah, his stream was great. I watched a lot of it. I was popping in and out because I was working. But yeah, it was, as always, I mean, like, it's, I'm always curious to hear his take because I know what he likes and what and how he works. And so certain things I don't work that way, so they're not as important. So if he criticizes a particular thing and I don't really care about it, I'll just be like, okay, whatever, blow that off. But then there's other things that are really important for him that are also really important for me. And so I always kind of listen in on those. So it was great to hear his take and great to see an in-depth take on it. He gravitated right away to polyphony, chords, pads, all that stuff, which is not anything that I really care much about in my performance stuff. But there was a lot of pieces about it that I'm looking forward to try. Like I mentioned, you know, the subtracks I think is going to be really super interesting for me, and all of the different routing options for the effects and buses and stuff like that. I'm really excited to see. Plus being able to route those, you know, out in different ways and being able to connect that, you know, either to another device or pedals or a mixer or whatever. I think that's going to be really interesting. So I saw a lot of people complaining that it doesn't have overbridge. My assumption would be that that's going to be coming soon, kind of like they did with the Digatone. It took a while for them to work out the bugs, so they didn't want to wait until that software was done to release the hardware. But I would assume, I don't see any reason why any modern device from them would not have overbridge. But it's definitely going to be a complex overbridge, so I'm sure it will take a little bit. But in the meantime, being able to have 4 separate outputs allows you to multi-track out into an audio interface and do a bunch of different things that you couldn't do with other devices other than the analog rhythm and the aux track. So it's kind of cool to see that again. I remember, you know, it's funny, like I mentioned before, everybody bitches when a new thing comes out that it doesn't do the one thing they want it to do. And I remember when the DTAC 2 came out and also the D-Tone 2, one of the things that people were just up in arms about was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it doesn't have multiple outputs and well, this is so dumb and we should blah, 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 and everybody complaining. And now this one comes out with multiple outputs and there's just like crickets. So I always take all that kind of, entitlement complaining, it's just like with a grain of salt. It always just kind of makes me laugh. So anyway, let's see here. Where are we at? Multisampling Eurorack seems fun. Yeah, I mean, multisampling Eurorack I think is great. I loved how Ura used that verbose oscillator or synth voice in order to do that, in order to be able to multi-sample, but also the fact that you can take these really crazy, awesome sounding monophonic voices from Eurorack, multi-sample those in, and then you have a crazy amount of polyphony. This is another thing too that I didn't hear a lot of people emphasizing, because again, whenever people want to bitch about something, they're like, there's only so many notes of polyphony, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know why they're not capitalizing on the fact that this has 8 notes of polyphony per track times 8 tracks. So there's 64 notes of polyphony. And if you're using the subtracks, so if you were talking about like one shots or drum things or whatever within those, you potentially have 64 note multi-tembrality as well, because you could have 8 different samples all hitting at the same time on a track from subtracks times 8 tracks. So just from a spec sheet standpoint, that's kind of bonkers. And I think it's really cool, and it's, I don't know, worth talking about. I don't know if it's going to be useful. I don't know if it'll be useful for me or for other people, but for the amount of people that bitch about how much polyphony things have, I'm surprised there wasn't more on the positive side when Toneberg came out, for like, oh my God, look at all this polyphony finally in an Elektron box, for sure. But finally in, kind of in general. So yeah, it's a lot to like. Let's see, where are we at here? Any thoughts on the lack of proper sidechain? My only thought is that it will probably get it. I know I've spoken directly with the guy who's in charge of all of their software. We hung out a bunch at Superbooth, and he was mentioning that when they switched from the Mark 1 to the Mark 2 of the Digiboxes, it was because they ran out of space to expand, and they needed to start into a new platform that would open up the ability to do things. They couldn't do more updates because they just didn't have any more space in those devices. So doing something new now, their mentality, at least with the Detect and Detone 2, and I'm assuming with this as well, is that they're doing things that with the idea that this is where they're going to start off, and they've kind of reserved themselves a ton of space to be able to expand to other things. Now, that said, don't get caught up in the downward spiral of, being entitled to updates or whatever. If you're going to buy something, buy it for how it is today, right? And if you like it, great, get it. And if you don't, wait until it's what you want to get and then get it. But don't buy it and then expect that you're entitled to updates. Fixes is one thing. Fixes of things that it doesn't do correctly or that are broken in the software, absolutely, those you're owed, because you bought a machine that was supposed to work. But as far as new things and updates and added voices and capability and engines and whatever, just be happy that you get something new for free. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So so the fact that it doesn't have that, I would be surprised if it didn't get the same, because it's a digital machine. So I would be surprised if it didn't get the same type of compressor capability that the Detect 2 and the Detone 2 got. I can understand how it will be a lot more complicated to implement with subtracks and things like that. So it doesn't surprise me it's not there now. It would surprise me if it didn't show up sometime in the next, year or whatever, along with a bunch of other things that I think we're kind of missing, that are in other machines that you would have just assumed would be there. And I think that, the way these companies work is they have to get a machine out at some point. You can't constantly be, you can't do the first 5 generations of upgrades before you even put something out, because then you'll never put things out. So at some point you have to say, this is our minimum viable product. We're going to put this out, and then we're going to, do things over time for that. And very much like the overbridge and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. Last week I bought Rhythm Mark II to start live improv techno. I think to buy PC-12 for controlling. Saw your video, you started the same way, but actually the Rhythm and PC-12 are away. So the Rhythm is right there. I think you can probably see, yes, right there. So it's still here. It's still my all-time favorite drum machine. In my opinion, it's the best drum machine ever made. It's amazing. So you can't go wrong with the Rhythm. It lacks some things, but it's old technology, but it's a great drum machine. PC-12 I actually sold quite a while ago, and for me that was just a size thing. It was great that it had 72 knobs, but it was just big. It was like carrying a whole nother groove box when I would travel to play shows, and I just didn't want to use it that way. If I was going to do it today, and Rhythm kind of similar, I mean, it's big, so carrying a full modular rack and all that, it's hard to carry Rhythm as well and bring everything carry on. So that's why I don't use it, and I use the Digitact instead when I travel. But the Rhythm, if you were going to take it with you and use a controller with it, I would say look into one of the newer controllers that are a bit more assignable. So if you're looking kind of more budget conscious, the new Launch Control XL, the Mark III, looks amazing. I messed with it at Knobcon, and it's really cool. It's way tougher than I thought it would be. Like the old one of the best things about it was how tough it was. And I was worried that because this one was really pretty, that it was going to be more fragile, but it seemed really super tough as well. So I would look at that one, or the Noiseite Drop if you want to spend quite a bit more money, or the Oxy one when it comes out. But something that can have macros, that can control much deeper. I also like the Chic, the N32. I've got that one over on the shelf over there. It's very cool as well, and it can do limited macros. I think each one can go to 2 destinations. Not sure how much the Oxy will have when it comes out. The Noiseite Drop, every one of the knobs can be mapped to 8 unique destinations, so they can be like full 8 destination macros. So again, I would look into that if you're looking for a controller, because they're a bit smaller and they're way more flexible than the Fader Fox. The Fader Fox is great if you want to have everything on the face of it, but what you sacrifice with that is size. It's much bigger. So that's why I don't have that one anymore. Peter, what's going on? Good to see you. See, the Tonerberg is getting Elektron users into synthesizers from an Elektron point of view, however, not enough knobber functions and limited keyboard range for synth nerds. I agree on some of that and disagree on some of that. I don't feel like this is a new get into synthesis machine. It is one of their deepest, most complex machines because of multi-sampling, multi-track, polyphony, a lot of that stuff. So I think this is kind of a more advanced, I think, than a beginner thing. I totally agree with the not a lot of knob per function, but that's just that's Elektron. You have to if you want knob per function, you need to get modular. And limited keyboard range, yeah, I mean that. I consider myself a synth nerd, and I am an absolutely horrific keyboard player. So having a keyboard is not important for me. So having that one is actually really handy. It's kind of like on the Hydrasynth desktop, how it has the little mini keyboard. For somebody like me, that works out great because I can put in a chord and I can just touch where I want that to go in the sequencer, and I'm not playing it in just because I'm really bad at that. And for anybody who needs something like that, I would say, just get a MIDI controller for it. The fact that it has USB-C is pretty cool now, so that it can host. I think that's awesome. So you don't have to have a MIDI controller that's DIN MIDI out. So that opens up to kind of all of the MIDI controllers that there are out there. Without having to have a USB MIDI host box and whatever. So it gives you a lot of flexibility that way, which I think is pretty cool. Let's see, Jesse, what's going on? Toneberg is growing on me the more I see it. Yeah, I think there was a knee-jerk reaction of, oh, it's not a new Octatrack. And then everybody looked for a reason to hate on it that it wasn't a new Octatrack. And it's like, well, just because you want a new Octatrack doesn't mean that's their motivation. Your priority is not necessarily their priority. Their priority is, let's create a new thing that can do something new and different that we've never done before. So, polyphonic multisampling is a totally new realm for Elektron. So yeah, it's a new thing there for sure. But yeah, it's growing on me too. I think it's pretty cool. Hey, what's going on, Christopher? Good to see you. Definitely a fun looking tool if that's what you're looking for though. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that for the right person, it's going to be amazing. And if it's not good for you, cool. That doesn't make it bad. That just means it's not good for you. So whatever. Do you see use case of the Toneberg to sample sounds from software synths? Yeah, actually, I didn't even mention that, but that was the other thing I haven't heard mentioned enough. So that that kind of auto multi-sampling with multiple levels of velocity, that automatically can be done in both directions over USB now to your computer. So that's another way this is going to be used. I think you're going to see a whole new realm of artists who have not been kind of traditional hardware artists. Where I would say is like in the EDM world, you're going to see this, or in like the dubstep bass music world, because a lot of their music is based on really complex patches from softsynths in the box, particularly Serum and all of the big ones, right? Now you're going to be able to take your favorite Serum patches, connect your USB cable to the Toneberg, and say, I want this multi-sampled as now a voice. And you could do it with an incredibly deep mono synth on something like Serum or Diva or any of the big, really good quality soft synths. You could multi-sample that into the Toneberg and then have it be these crazy good sounding polyphonic synth voices that you could then use for whatever, for production, for live performance, for whatever. So I can see this getting used a lot by people who they do a lot of their work in the box and they want to take things out. You saw that a lot with the Octatrack, that people would do work in the box and then they would pull 8 stems and they would load those into the Octatrack and then they would kind of reassemble those live as part of a track. What I can see people doing is saying, okay, I'm going to build this crazy sounding, amazing synth voice in, Serum or Diva or whatever. And then I'm going to sequence it all from the Toneberg in my studio. So I've got the sequence, I've got everything that I want. And then I'm just going to multi-sample that soft synth into the Toneberg and actually take that with me when I go play live or when I go to another studio to do work or whatever. So being able to pull any soft synth and multi-sample it into this without kind of getting artifacts from pitch shifting and whatever, that's going to be pretty sweet for a lot of people. Not necessarily my workflow, but I think for people who work like that, I think this thing is going to be really, really valuable. So yeah, I totally agree, Wabbit. I think that's a great use case for it. No sense brew my coffee, they're all bad. You must have seen my snide remark on EasyBots thing when everybody was just like bitching about it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this. And I was like, yeah, it doesn't make coffee for you either. But that doesn't mean it's a bad device. It just means it's not a coffee maker, So I don't know, that stuff just always makes me laugh when everybody just wants to complain about stuff. So anyway, decided to buy a Digitac 2 as I never had the OG. Yeah, the 2's great. I mean, I think the 2's great, and I think the 1 is the second best. So it's like, you kind of can't go wrong with those. Let's see, are you finding the BOEM modules worth the many HP they take up versus the battering ram? It's funny, I get asked this a lot, and I'm glad you asked that, Peter, because it was one of the things I wanted to answer here, because I've been asked this like dozens of times since I got the BOEM. So here's the thing. If you need a kick, just a kick to sound amazing, it doesn't even matter what kind of kick you need. If you just need a kick, I would still say that the battering ram is the kick, right? And it's only 8 HP, hardly takes up any space, and it sounds phenomenal, right? Amazing power. And I've played it on some really good sound systems, and it sounds even better the better the sound system you play it on. So for me, the battering ram is the kick. What's different with the Bohm is that if you want to do kick with effects, with rumble, with effects, and multiple different kinds of rumbles, everything from percussive to white noise to reverb to sub bass, and you want to have effects on that, and you want to have sidechain ducking of your whole mix that's controllable, and you want to have effects on your kick and all of that stuff, I haven't heard anything that compares to the Bohm, right? If you were going to do all of that same stuff, but use the battering ram as your kind of kick that you built everything off of, it would take 2 or 3 times as many HP to do everything that the Bohm can do, because they kind of condensed it all into one machine. And it really is one machine, by the way. I don't know if you guys realize this, but the two kind of peripheral modules don't really do anything internally. They're just controllers, and all of the processing takes place in the main module. So it really is one main kick with a couple of different ways to control it and do a bunch of different stuff with it. So it's just a different thing. It's kind of apples and oranges. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to describe, because the battering ram is so good. It's such a good kick that any kind of comparison, you would say, oh, well, it's like, a bicycle to a Ferrari or whatever. It makes it sound like the bicycle is a bad thing. And it's not. Like, this is amazing, but it just doesn't do the same things. And it would take a lot more modules and a lot more HP to do those same things with another kick. So, I've been blown away by the sound of the Bohm. I mean, it sounds really good, like really, really good. So anyway, let's see. What's going on, Luke? Good to see ya. Tonverk will grow on us. I think so too. I mean, not necessarily for everybody. It's not that it's good or bad. It may be good or bad for you. I think it will be good for me. That's why I'm interested to try it. And if it's not, I'll get rid of it, as I've done with a lot of gear. There's a lot of gear that I've gotten, I've liked, but then I found that I didn't use as much as I thought I would, or I had other things that were doing that same thing, so it became redundant. So I just started getting rid of that stuff. And yeah, it's kind of the way I do things. You did a lot of traveling lately. Yes, I did. And I'm kind of in the middle right now, and then I'm about to do it again. I had shows in Dayton and Chicago. I have New York next weekend. I'll be in Brooklyn on the 20th of September. So if you're going to be around for that, definitely swing by. All the information's in on my Instagram. It's probably the best place to see it. And then I've got about 2 weeks. Yeah, 2.5 weeks after that, where I'll be back home and kind of doing like normal work stuff. And then I'll be back to Europe the 15th of October to the 28th of October. I have a few shows in Berlin, going to Brussels for a couple days to visit friends, and then I'll be in Amsterdam for ADE, playing 2, possibly 3 different shows at ADE. So if you're going to be around, shoot me a message. Would love to meet you. Would always love when I kind of connect people in real life and get to see like who the people actually are that are, that I see from the chats and all that stuff. So yeah, definitely do that. North of Hamburg. Awesome. No rush for TV purchase for me. TV. I don't know what that is. Toneberg. TV. I'll have to get used to that one. Let's see. Peter Brown picked up the Bohm Trio a week or 2 ago, and it's so good. Yeah, it really is. It really is. And that's the thing. Battery gram is a kick. The Bohm is really a kick system. It's the kick with all the other bells and whistles. So it just depends on what you need. Let's see here. Studio system then. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Studio system, maybe the Bohm. Yeah, I mean, I'm using it in my traveling case. because I think it's worth the size. But yeah, if you were just going to use it to record with, that would be amazing as well. Thanks for sharing. Looking forward to see what it drops. Yeah, me too. See all the generative future of the Oxy, or more traditional, do you see other generative feature of the Oxy? Do I use? See, wow, man, I'm not reading correctly. Do I use? I use some of them. So for me, generative stuff and random stuff it's really important when you can control it and when you can edit it. So for example, I will use, like in the Oxy, one of the things I love to do is put down a gate pattern so that I have a rhythm that I like, and then I'll randomly generate pitch in key on those gates to generate melodies. And then what I found is really fun is to use the accumulator to just like pick one of those notes and have it do subtle change over time. And so that way you have kind of a grounding melody where you only have one note of the whole melody that's changing, but it is changing. So it gives you a lot of really interesting variation. And if you do that with two and you have them doing it on different timings and at different intervals, it can be really cool because then you have a pattern that just continually evolves, but it'll stay in key and it'll stay, it'll always have this kind of basis thing that it's relative to. So yeah, so I really enjoy that stuff. But there's some stuff that I don't use. Like I don't use the generative sequencers very much because it's just not my thing. I mean, I use kind of mono, multi, maybe chord if I'm looking to do a chord thing, but that's pretty much it. Let's see here. Boom is fantastic. Feels a bit like cheating, but worth the HP. Yeah, I mean, cheating is all kind of relative. If it's a good thing, it's like saying, you buy a good synth and it's like cheating because it sounds good. So I don't know if it's really cheating, but yeah, it is very easy to make it sound good, which I think is very cool. Let's see. Have you tried the Lightref monolith MIDI computer? I have not, so I'm not the person to ask about that at all. Toby, what's going on from Spain? Having a lot of fun with the Bohm. Good to hear. Let's see. Always lock into me for learning. Thanks, man. Good to hear that. I'm glad I can help. That I don't know if you guys know this, but that was the whole reason why I started this. Was I was getting into like live hardware, modular, all of that stuff, and I wasn't finding the information that I needed. So I had to kind of struggle through a bunch of stuff on my own and figure it out. And then I was like, you know what? I'm sure there's other people that are struggling through the same thing. So every time I would learn something new, I would try to put it out there so I could get, help kind of share the knowledge, as Ricky Tina says. Yeah, it kind of grew into this, but yeah, it all started off as that idea of wanting to help people not have to struggle through the same stuff that I was struggling through at the same time. So I'm glad it's working. So thank you for tuning in. Boom, 100% worth it. I totally agree. The space where Knobcon takes place looks a bit boring. Yeah, I mean, it's a conference hotel. It's not super booth. For sure. It's not outside in the woods and the trees and stages in the woods and food trucks, and it's not that at all. But it is cool to get to hang out with everybody that you don't see very often. So I like that part of it. I think it's what you make of it. Industry struggling again. Yeah, especially over here with tariffs. It's really brutalizing the hardware industry for sure. That's going to be something that's definitely going to hurt Toneberg sales, particularly in the US, is that it is just because the importers like Perfect Circuit or whatever have to pay the import tariff on it. And because of that, the same machine that I think is it's 1,400 euros, so it would have been similar in US dollars normally, is now going to be $1,700 because that extra bit is the tariff they have to pay to come in. So unfortunate that that's hitting, but where it's really hurting, and you heard a lot of people talking about this at Knobcon, is it's really hurting a lot of the small modular companies because a lot of their circuit boards are made in China and a lot of their parts come from China, and it's brutal. So hopefully that will all get worked out soon. Let's see. Global financial crisis hints. Yeah, for sure. Did you check out the Cosmic Debris? I did. It's pretty cool. It was, I have to say, my other favorite thing that I saw, and I forgot to mention this, was WMD's Clutch module, which they had been teasing this for a while. It was going to be AMMT when that split off. Now they're back together, and it's now going to be a full WMD module, and they've totally changed it since I had seen it last. So now it's very feature packed, and it does some crazy things. You think like hi-hat module, how cool would that be? And it does some really crazy things that I have not seen in any other module. So that was another one. Cosmic Debris was fine. It was not really for me, but yeah, it was cool. It was also very cool. Use the Ohm Force Bohm. Why not the Ultra Kick? Because I like the Bohm more than the Ultra Kick. Just sound-wise, I would say if I was going to just do a kick, I would do the battering ram, which I like much more than the Ultra Kick as well. And then the Bohm is just a next level, even above that, for everything that it does. So yeah, kick is very important to me, and having specific types of kicks is really important. And I can get those really, really quickly and easily. And a lot of variation of kicks I can get very quickly and easily with both the battering ram and the Bohm. So that's why. The Ultra Kick it's kind of like the Erica Synths and some of the others, Kickain. They're just, for me, they were always like fine, but they weren't like blew me away. Battering ram, as soon as I heard it, blew me away. The Bohm, as soon as I heard it, blew me away. The others were all just like, yeah, that's a fine kick. That's good. Let's see here. Syntact came through. I think the Toneberg will be a strong addition. Yeah, I think so too. It's something totally different. DTAC 2 is at peak. I think it will get Elektron love. Yeah, I think now that they all are in a new platform and they've got room for upgrades, I know that that's their reasoning for switching, was so that they could continue to evolve these things over years. So yeah, it's good. How can they get another 1,000 out of our pocket? Got to collect them all to unlock all the features. Yeah, I mean, I don't think, as I'm not as cynical as to say, that they're just doing something else just to make money. It's a business. So yes, they're doing something to make money, but I don't think the idea is that you have to get them all. I think that they're more, from a business standpoint, they're more looking at, let's broaden out who's going to be interested in our devices. So like Elektron for years were techno machines, period. And then they started to bring in a bit more of the like glitchy, that kind of, there's a lot of drum and bass people using them and things like that. Some hip hop people, although they're going to stick mostly to MPCs. But with something like this, you open up to, people that want to use it for backing tracks, for example, but they want to program those backing tracks so they can multi-sample actual instruments. You can multi-sample. I think there's going to be a ton of people that are going to come up with some really interesting downloadable multi-samples for the Toneberg. I don't know if you watched Lou Pop's video, but just hearing the quality of the sound of a piano, for example, that is actually multi-sampled across multiple octaves, that's going to have a totally different group of people that are going to be interested in that. And so it's not necessarily trying to get more money out of the people who are already Elektron people. They're trying to grow the number of Elektron people and saying, like, we have this amazing sequencer. I think people who want multi-sampled real instruments would be into that. Or we've got this, I think the people that are into VSTs and want to multi-sample that would be into that. And it's just opening up new markets rather than trying to get more out of the people. Like, we put that on ourselves if we're fans of Elektron stuff, that we have to get the latest thing. I'm guilty of that too. But I don't think that that's necessarily their motivation. Their motivation is, let's do the things that we do for the specific people that they're interested in, and while at the same time trying to grow into, more areas of people who are interested in it. That was the whole thing with the analog heat plus effects. That was not necessarily for people who already have Elektron devices. That was for people who have a whole bunch of vintage synths and they wanted to make those vintage synths sound more modern with modern effects. And so all of a sudden you get a whole new slice of market, a whole new, you've broadened the market. So from a business perspective, it gives you more people you can sell to. So you make more money that way, really. So that's my take on it. But, I know there's people who are a bit more cynical, but that's fine. That's kind of my take. Let's see. Bitbox Micro can do the automated multisampling too. Yes, it can. Not sure about polyphonic playback though. It does not. And it does have polyphony, but not as much. And it's a totally different world of sound quality and capability. This polyphonic multisampling that this can do is what do you call it? It can not only multi-sample by tone, but it can also multi-sample varying degrees of velocity automatically during that multi-sample thing. So then when you get playback and even if you're not using a velocity sensitive keyboard attached to it, even if you were just using the regular keyboard there, you can change the velocity. And if the velocity in your original synth or your VST or whatever you sampled, if that changed the tone over the course of different velocities, that is reflected in the multi-sample, which is really, really super interesting. It's not just taking a one shot and sampling a whole bunch of one shots and then kind of extrapolating what goes between them. It's doing that, but then it's also adding the velocity layers, which I think is pretty interesting, pretty cool. FYI, there's a 30-minute delay on YouTube chat unless you choose it. I don't know what you mean. 30-minute delay? I think I'm seeing the chat right now. Even less than 30 minutes. Maybe 30 seconds? I don't know. But I'll keep going. Do you use any distortion modules in your live rack? So distortion, not really. I use a lot of wave folding, which accomplishes something similar. The distortion, wave folding, saturation, all those things are to add harmonics and make the tone more interesting, obviously. But no, I don't use a lot of distortion. I find it hard to control. I'm not good at it. Some people are, like if you ever listen to Krista Bourgeois, she's so good with distortion and controlling it. And she's got so much that it could make this really messy mix, and her mixes still sound really great. So she's very good at it. I'm not. So I prefer wave folding. I like that hands-on control. And then also saturation. I use saturation on my end of chain to add harmonics between harmonics so that it fills out and makes it sound like a mastered mix. So not really distortion though, mostly saturation. So we'll see. Maybe I'll start using it more. Let's see what else. Have you met anybody wanting to do iOS jams or with iPads? Wabbit, who's on the chat right now, he's big into iPads and oh my God, what's it called? AUM, and getting gear in through iPad and mixing it and using it for effects. So yeah, definitely connect with him. But I haven't done much of it because for me, I don't enjoy the touchscreen interface when I play live. So that's why I've never gotten really into the MPCs or any of that stuff, because it's just not an interface that I enjoy. I like not only the tactile side, but I love how it builds up muscle memory. And it's hard to build muscle memory with a touchscreen that's different things all the time, because at the same spot on the screen, it will often be something different. And so I like to dumb things down when I play live, so I always know where things are. I can keep it, keep it pretty basic that way. So I don't really use touchscreens much. Obviously I use the black box and it has a touchscreen, but I really don't use the touchscreen at all. I just use it to launch clips and that's it. I'm not really doing anything in there because it's not an interface that I enjoy live, especially when it's like hot and sweaty and your fingers are sweaty and it's just like, yeah, not the best. for me. Let's see, I can see the Toneberg as a very expensive, more portable replacement to my Korg wave state for multi-sampled instruments with sequenced effects. Not bothered about time stretching at all. Yeah, I mean, that was the one thing that I kind of wish that it would have had, but it didn't, because there's nothing, other than the Octatrack, there's nothing in the Elektron line right now that time stretches well. And so I was kind of hoping that that would get tacked on there or in the Digitact or wherever somewhere. And it may at some point. I mean, that's kind of why they open up into these things. But the fact that it doesn't is fine. I'll just keep doing time stretching with my black box. And that's why I have the black box in my live setup, is for time stretching. So I wish that it did that, but whatever. It's not a deal breaker. I don't think it would be a welcome addition, but it's not a deal breaker. Yeah, as far as comparing to the wave state, I don't know. I mean, I guess I can see where they do something similar, but this one feels very different to me, but maybe I could be wrong. I haven't used the wave state a ton, so. What's happening? Bought the Hapex yesterday. It is too expensive for me, but it's the only solution I've found to mix between projects. Yes. Yes. I don't know what else to say to that. Yes. It is something to mix between projects, if that's important for you. And again, this goes back to something that I've mentioned here on this stream, but I talk about this a lot as well. It's not that something's good or bad or better or worse or the best or the, whatever. It all comes down to you and what you need. Like, I don't need to mix between projects, so that would not be a deal breaker for me. But if you do, then that's absolutely what you should get, and it kind of comes back to what we were talking about with the Tonverk. Like, there's certain things that for some people would be deal breakers and for others won't. And I think that's the same with every piece of gear. We're so lucky in this day and age that we have so many pieces of gear out there that are so good that, that we have so many different options. It's like we're so lucky that we have so many different options that we can choose from, so that we can find our own workflow. And I think we're so lucky as well that we have Modular and things like the Octatrack and even like the Toneberg, where you can create your own workflow based on the functionality of the thing. Where it used to be like you were stuck with whatever the workflow was of the company that made it. Now we've got so many different ways to modify and change workflows that it's so cool. You can customize to your own thing. So there's not any better or worse or, I think a great example is like the teenage engineering stuff. Some people love the OP1 field, some people hate the OP1 field, but I don't think it should be love or hate. What I'm saying is, for some people, that workflow and the things that it does really well works for them. And there are other things that it's missing aren't deal breakers. And then there's for other people that want, sequencing and MIDI IO and stuff, well, that's a deal breaker. And it doesn't make it good or bad. It just means it's not a good fit for whatever you want to do. I use the example all the time of Roland gear, like modern day Roland gear. I have friends that their whole entire live setup is all Roland gear. And for me, I can't use their gear because the workflow is so convoluted. It doesn't work the way that my brain works, and Elektron stuff does. But for my friend, it works really well for him, and the Elektron stuff doesn't. So great. Like, one's great for one, one's great for the other. It doesn't make them one better or worse than the other. So let's see what else. Sam M. Good to see you, Circo. Good to see you too. A bit late to the chat, so you've already answered this. Apologies. When can we expect you to upload some Toneberg videos? If you're interested in getting one, that is. I would love to upload some Toneberg videos as soon as I get one. But yeah, get me one. Get me one and I will upload those videos. Let's see what else. Ohmforce have also said they are planning on adding more kicks in firmware updates in the future. Yes, they are. And they've also mentioned that they can, the kicks are really interesting because they're sample based, but they're really basically a sample, like samples that they convert into wavetables. So it gives you a lot of different control versus a one-shot sample that you're trying to control. And he mentioned to me that they could do custom wavetables for specific kick drums if you wanted. So that's going to be something maybe in the future that who knows, that could be a future thing for them. Let's see, still have my Digitact OG. Had to wait 3 months to get replacement keys from Elektron because they went tacky and it became unusable. Hardly used it since I got out of using it. It's too bad. Yeah, that sticky key thing is weird. Let's see if I can get here. Yeah, there's this guy in Australia who makes these, which it's basically a lid for your Elektron devices, and then it's got a stand built into it, so you can do like angled stands, which is really cool. But if you look in here, it's got this thing, and it comes with, I don't know where I put mine, but you can snap in these things that are dehumidifiers, so you can set this on top when you store your Elektron boxes, and it dehumidifies the air inside the case, so it keeps the knobs from getting sticky. Because he said he made that because where he lives in Australia is really super humid, and so he needed a solution for the sticky key thing as well. And apparently it works. It's not a thing for me because I live in Colorado where it's like 2% humidity all the time. So none of mine have ever gone sticky, but I understand that that's definitely an issue. So maybe look into these. The company's called Mod. I think, yes. I think it says, can you see that? Let's see if you can put it in the light. Yes, Mod. So yeah, check it out. They're pretty cool. I think he sells them on Etsy. Great machine, but put me off upgrading to the DG2. Which one? The Toneberg did? Very different. So if you're looking for a lot more sample control, you don't really care about the polyphony and stuff, the Digitact 2 is still better. This one is going to be more interesting for people that need polyphony, that need, the multi-sampling and all that stuff. Let's see, for sure, get you on the touch displays. I have to map all those controls to a controller. Yeah, and then it just becomes like, well, why don't you just get hardware? If you're going to go that to a computer, which is an iPad as a computer, and then to a controller, you could just do, your laptop with all that stuff and a controller. So that's where I always end up in that, because I don't want to use the touch screen. And so to be able to get all that out of something else, I would need a controller, and then I'm just playing a controller. So I might as well use my laptop, because my laptop can do things that my hardware stuff cannot do at all. But it's less fun for me. I like the feedback. I love the look and feel of hardware. So that's always been my thing. Let's see here. I have Logic on my new iPad. Do you think the DAW course you do would help, even though I know you use Ableton? Yes. I mean, the hybrid production course that I do is not specific to a particular DAW. It's not a how to use a DAW lesson. It's a how to use hardware in production lesson. And then my other course is how to use hardware in improvised live performance. So there's a lot of differences in that. So yeah, it for sure is great with Logic. I have people that use Logic. I have people that use all sorts of different DAWs. It doesn't necessarily have any impact at all. Let's see, I know you've mentioned this before, but where do your black patch cables from? Luigi's. There you go. The next one answered. Luigi's Modular. They're excellent. Luigi's from here in Denver. Big fan. They're thin, which I really like because they're very flexible to move around. So yeah, I definitely love those. Big fan. I love their 90-degree ones because when I use my case folds, and so having the 90-degree ones means I have a ton of space between. I never have to worry about them banging together, and yeah, it's cool. Let's see, what do you think about Kink and his way of performing live? Have you talked to him? I've never talked to him, but I love watching Kink. I had so much fun when I was at the store last year, 2 years ago, when he played. And it was so much fun because that particular store event, the variety of styles and who was playing was great. So he brought his like super funky, groovy, high energy, and while other people were bringing more, traditional techno or more hypnotic or more whatever. So it was awesome. I love the way he performs. It's his stuff is, I love the way he does kind of a looper based thing where he'll build up a track from nothing, from scratch. And I also love how he integrates a lot of different types of gear. So he's not just using he's not trying to make one box do everything. He has different things that are each designed for certain things, to the point where he'll have like a turntable so that he can sample, live audio from the turntable or whatever. So getting that stuff, getting that style is great. I love his kind of improvisational style. And I think the thing I love the most about Kink is his energy. Seeing him play live is so fun because you can tell he is having a blast when he's doing it, which I think is the most important thing. I think we get way too caught up and way too in our heads about it's got to be perfect and what are my compressor settings and what are my whatever, all the things that don't matter at all. And the things that do matter, which is the audience having fun? Are you having fun? Is it a fun party? Are you doing stuff fun together? That's where it all comes together. And I think that he's amazing for that. So I am a huge fan of Kink, by the way. Yeah. If you can't get them direct via Starving Student Music Supply, yes. That's where, even if you go on Amazon, Amazon is going to Starving Student Music Supply to get Luigi's cables. So I would definitely check those. Kink is a legend. He is. I totally agree. What's up, EasyBot? We've been talking about you a lot. I don't know if you're watching this from the beginning, but there was a whole EasyBot section earlier. So you've been the subject, even if you haven't been here, but it's good to see you. Welcome in. Hopefully we're going to do a stream together sometime soon. Hello. Toneberg stream on Tuesday, I hope. Yeah, the whole thing was we were all talking about how good your stream was and how it showed all these really cool things. And it's comprehensive, so you can get a good idea of what you like and what you don't like. So I think that's very cool. And thanks for the tip. Sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Be on the desk for sure. Awesome. No, you just got here. Yep. Well, welcome. Like I said, you've been here in spirit because we've been talking about you all the way through this. Yeah. So yeah, glad you're streaming. I'm glad I'm streaming too. It's fun. I haven't done one of these in a while where it was just like an Ask Me Anything thing. So again, chuck those questions in there. We can talk about whatever. But yeah, lots of stuff going on. I had some questions about travel as well. I'm getting a new case, which is supposed to arrive on Monday, I believe. Let's see my UPS tracking, if it's still arriving Monday. I think that was the idea. Looks like it, yes. So getting a new case, which should be interesting. Still Morph Modular, but it's the new version, the Explorer case, which I'm really super excited about. This one has 1U, which I don't have any 1U modules right now, but I'm trying to figure out what I want to add into 1U. But in the meantime, it'll just be empty and I'll just be putting in my regular stuff. But yeah, it's cool because even though it's now 14U84, it's still small enough that I can put it in carry-on. I did have to get a new carry-on because the one that my older case fit into, this one will not fit into because it's about an inch wider, just from all of the 1U spot. So that'll be a new thing. But yeah, it's that's going to be cool. So that's going to be a new addition. In the meantime, I actually did, let me see if I can show this. I built out this case just to mess with because I needed to be doing some stuff to get ready for my show on the 20th. So one of the reasons why I wanted to show this case is because I get asked all the time, like, oh, you've got all the space and you would never use that if you didn't whatever. This is half the size of the case that I was doing before. This is 6U84. And this will give you an idea of, I get asked all the time, what would you use if you, what's your desert island, whatever. Well, this gives you an example of what I would scale down to by cutting the size of my case in half. And you see that it's battering ram and Archer's rig are still there. Bohm is still there. Ghost is still there. And then two voices, BIA and Pizza. and then effects. So it's like, this is for me like the important stuff. Oh, and the Oxy MIDI, and of course my mixer, the Exelon, which is I could never give up. But you see, like scale down, there was a lot of stuff that I wouldn't bring if I was just going to be using the bare minimum of stuff, and that's what that case kind of represents, is what I would bring if I was if I had half the amount of space. So it's those are the key ones. So anyway, let's see what else we got here. Yeah, get into tip war. Awesome. What do you think of the FX Aid? I use the FX Aids all the time. I have 2 of them. It's funny, for effects, I have 2 FX Aids and I have 2 of the Versios from Noise Engineering. And whichever one I use kind of depends on how much space I have in that case and where it fits. The FX Aids are great because there's a lot of different algorithms in there and they're only 6 HP. So it gives you like really kind of limited, tight space with a lot of possibilities. And it's great because I don't really change them up during a performance, and I also don't with the Versios either. I kind of set them the way that I want to use them, and I have them on sends. So I can set that up to be this kind of combo delay reverb, and I can put it on a send, and then I send things to it, and I might tweak settings a little bit, but yeah, it's great. Looked annoying to use. No, for me, I've never found, I think they're super straightforward. There's 4 knobs. You know exactly what they are. The only thing is just trying to memorize which algorithm you like to use, because there's like, I can't remember what's the combination, but there's a good number of algorithms in there. So I just have certain ones that I kind of stick to. So I just make sure I'm always on those. And then yeah, I'll just use them as send. So I'm not really tweaking it very much. And I use the XLs just because they're a little bit bigger and the knobs are a little bigger. So I find that you're not like having to get in there with your tweezer fingers or whatever to make them work. But yeah, I like those. Let's see. Have you tried to make a touring machine with your modular? I have a touring machine in my studio case, and I actually don't use it all that much. As I mentioned before, the randomness for me, there's a couple things I like about randomness. I like to have a certain amount of control over it. And then I also like to be able to edit things per step afterwards. So that last part kind of excludes a lot of the modular random generative sequencers where you get the kind of classic bleepy bloopy modular sound, because once I generate something, if there's one note in that I don't like, I have to be able to go in and change that note, whether it's changing pitch or length or velocity or taking it out altogether or whatever. And with a lot of things like touring machines, you can get a pattern, but you've got to kind of explore around until you find one you like, and then you get it to do that pattern over and over again. And because my live shows are improvised, if I spend a lot of time exploring around trying to find things, it becomes that annoying thing that was one of the things that kept me out of modular for a long time. It seemed like every time I went to a modular show, I went away with this impression that the people on stage were learning their gear in front of the crowd, because they're just like kind of trying stuff out, and just like things didn't go together and they were just kind of randomly exploring. And I wanted to make sure I didn't sound like that when I was performing, even though I do it live and I use some randomness. And so things like that take a little bit to dial in where you want is a challenge, because like I don't pre-cue anything. So I'm not writing in headphones. I'm writing live so that the crowd can hear. And so for me, having that kind of stuff doesn't work, unfortunately. Now, having it in my studio case is interesting, because in my studio case, I can take hours and hours and hours and hours to create something that I really love, and then I'm going to record it. And so it's really different. Nobody's listening in while I'm experimenting and exploring around. So I'm not ruining anybody's party by trying to find the right random combination, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that's why I don't really use touring machines, but I could. Let's see, I have a question. I'm using a Torso T1 for sequencing, push 3, and Astrolab. I found it hard just to generate interesting melodies. Is Oxy good for generating melodies? I don't want to input notes. Yes. So the Torso is, so this kind of goes along with the question that we were just talking about. The Torso T1 is really fun if you want to let it do stuff, right? Like you can set parameters and then let it generate things. And Torso's great for that. You'll come up with some really creative and interesting things. The reason why I use the Oxy One is because I can do that same stuff with the Oxy One, but I can also do it with a lot more control. So for example, the way I use the randomness is I'll put in a gate pattern because I know that, let's say, if I want something to be bouncy, I know I'm gonna have things mostly on the offbeat or on the upbeat. So it makes something sound more bouncy. Or if I want it more driving, I'm gonna have more stuff on the downbeats. Or if I want it more of a rolling sound, I'll have things on 16th notes. So I can kind of set the vibe with rhythm. And then I can use the randomness of the Oxy with some control still to randomly generate pitch on those notes. So I still keep the rhythm that I like, but I can generate notes on those. And you can set the key so that you generate them randomly in key. You can set the randomness and the range. So the range is how far it will go up or down from the root note. So you can keep it really tight if you want to do bass lines or whatever. And then you can set, so the randomness then says, what are the odds that two notes or whatever next to each other will be the same or different. So if randomness is 100%, you'll never have two notes the same next to each other. And if it was 0%, they would all be the same next to each other. So you have to have some randomness, but not too much. So it's a way to really control that. And then once you generate that in the Oxy, then you've got everything laid out in front of you. You can go in and individually change pitch of any individual note, take them out, add in more, change gate length, change velocity, all that stuff. So you can do a lot with it. So that's kind of why I go that way rather than the T1. But the T1's great. I mean, for me, the kind of top tier of sequencers out there that are specifically sequencers, like not things that include sequencers with them, like the Elektron boxes, but things that are specifically only sequencers. I think you have the T1, the Hapex, and the Oxy. Those are like the top of the top. And each one is really interesting for a certain workflow. So it just depends on what your workflow is. If you want something that generates more of the thing without you participating as much, the T1 can be great for that because it comes up with some really cool ideas, and you can have parameters as well. So it'll like stay within ranges. So I would say the T1's really good for that as well. And obviously the Hapex is great for, as somebody mentioned before, you can have two projects open at the same time. You can mix between them. It's got a whole bunch of modulation things. And so for me, the Oxy One was kind of like for portability, it's battery powered, and it does much of what the Hapex does, and I think more than what the T1 does. For me, that kind of became the logical choice for my workflow. But again, not everybody's traveling to gigs and getting on a plane and having to carry their gear all the time. So the portability thing and the battery powered thing doesn't matter to a lot of people. So in that case, the Hapex does what the Oxy does and more. So that might be the right one for you. So it just kind of depends. Okay. Let's see, modular is organic. Yes, it can be. Pure knowledge. Thanks, man. Yeah. Surgeon set at Superbooth was basically T1 and S4. Yes and no. T1 S4 and the 1010 black box. And the 1010 black box in his set has a lot of stuff that it's doing. He's playing a lot of loops and samples, and he's got things sequenced in it and all that stuff. And you don't really see it because it's kind of below the surface. But the black box is integral to his set. If you ever watch the sets that he does with Stur during ADE, he plays with the last ones. He played with a Pulsar 23 and a Lemon Drop, like the granular sequencer. He was using the Lemon Drop before he was using the S4, and then the 1010 black box and a T1. and he's playing for hours and hours and hours. And that's how he plays live as well sometimes. So he can do a lot because he's leaning a lot on the black box for what it does. The S4 in his set is kind of the playable bit and the improvisational bit, which sounds amazing because he's really, really good at it. And so being able to do interesting stuff with that, and then he's sequencing stuff in the black box from the T1. And if I'm not wrong, he's also sequencing stuff in the T1, or sorry, in the black box from the black box, because it has its own built-in sequencer. So there's a lot going on in his sets, even though his gear is like super minimalistic. But yeah, he's one of the legends. He's one of the amazing ones for sure. So let's see what we got. Feel free to dump those questions in. Yeah, happy to answer whatever. And on the modulars organic thing too, that's really funny that I have conversations with people about this all the time. So modular is, I think there's two different kind of, at least in my mind, two different schools of kind of like purpose and methodology and workflow and like reasoning behind modular. I think both schools love the fact that it's customizable and you can make your own instrument and then play it, which I think is very cool. And for me, that's what modular is, right? For me, modular is the modular aspect of I can put in a module, take out a module, I can mix and match and do that stuff. There's other people who like to think that the modular means modulation, which sure, it can as well. But that goes to the two different kind of use cases for modular. One, I think, is a performance use case, and the other one, I think, is a kind of creative and exploration and sound design use case. So the organic stuff for me comes in when people are being explorative and doing sound design and generative things and random things and, you know, touring machines and sample and holds and interesting, you know, cross modulation and all that stuff. That's one whole world of modular that I think is amazing and super fun. And that's kind of what I usually do in my studio, modular. Then for me, there's a second world of modular, which is the live performance side. It's the ability to be able to have a whole bunch of synths in one box that you can control in one area, that you have knob per function, that you have hands-on. And that one's way less about kind of exploring and modulation and all that stuff, and way more about, you know, performative, hands-on, the kind of fun of playing bit, rather than using a groove box and staring at a screen, or using a laptop and a controller and staring at a screen. You get to actually like reach out and touch your music, which I think is really fun that way. So for me, I see those two schools of modular a lot. And we were actually talking about this at Knobcon quite a bit, because you can see when you go to any one of these shows like Knobcon or Super Booth or whatever, where there's a lot of modular there, there's the gear itself, the modules themselves kind of sort themselves into these two different categories. Now there's a lot of companies that have crossover that I think are good for both groups, but you can always tell when a module was designed by somebody who is performing with modular and is also an engineer, versus somebody who is an engineer and an explorer and a sound designer or a producer and is not performing, because they're going to gear this towards that type of workflow. And so like you take a company like WMD, everybody that works at WMD performs live with modular. And so anytime you get a module from WMD, you know it's going to be performative live. They're not making these like crazy out there, you know, exploratory, you know, although the Scorpion is pretty crazy, but that's not the point of what they do. Their stuff is really made for performance, you know, starting with their performance mixer. And then you've got companies like BoardBrain, like the mixer that I use. They're live performers. So the mixer is really designed to be played live. It's a performance instrument. It's not a set it and forget it mixer that you would use in a sound design kind of standpoint. And then you get modules like, I like to use the Chaos Devices Odessa as an example of this, I love this module. I love the sound of it. It's amazing. But it takes me about, 10 or 15 minutes of exploring and tweaking, and you kind of find the right thing. Then when you find that thing, it's amazing. And then you can record it and do whatever. That's not practical for live performance. You don't want to be that guy who's learning his gear in front of the crowd, right? So you don't want to be exploring for 10 or 15 minutes to find a good sound. You want things that you can tweak that sound good quick, that you can get to these new and interesting and creative sounds quick. So that whole modular's organic thing, I think for me, is it goes to those two separate things. Like for some people, it's more the organic modulation, generative, that side. And for other people, it's more the hands-on, performative, and in one sense, really practical, being able to have a whole bunch. Like when my case is full size, I have almost 20 individual voices in my case, including like some that are multi-voices. So 20 voices in a case. If I wanted 20 desktop synths, there's no way I could travel with that. So there's a practical aspect to having one box that has 20 things and mixing and modulator and effects and all that stuff in it. So anyway, that's that. Let's see what else. Christopher, Droid is my favorite sequencer and is in the case, but that's another story. Yeah, Droid's awesome. And I was actually talking to somebody about Droid at Superbooth as well. I think Jesse, who's on here, was who I was talking to. And Droid's cool. It's another one of those things. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier on about like the Noiseite, whether it's the warp or the drop, where Droid takes a lot to set up and get it the way you want it. But then once you do, it's really cool. And because of that, it can do so many cool things and you can really customize it the way you want to. So yeah, Droid's very cool. I never got into that workflow, but I know a lot of people who really enjoy it a lot. So let's see, technical question, love those. Did you ever try any high pass filter between kick and the rest of the mix to prevent muddy low frequencies, like the Shockmod high pass? Well, so for example, the Shockmod battering ram kick has a high pass built into it. Which you can select or deselect. So if you want that super low end, I think the high pass is at 30 Hertz, if I'm not wrong. So yes, I mean, when I use that, I do that a lot actually. But no, I haven't used a separate module to act as a high pass between, just because I didn't need to in that. But yeah, the battering ram already has that built in. So it's a very good one. Let's see, but if Oxy 1 was there when I started, I would probably use it now. Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same kind of with DAW. When everybody's like, I use this DAW or I use that DAW, I think it's whatever you got quick and good with first becomes your DAW. It's not like there's one that's so much better than the other. It's, I like Ableton, but I've been using Ableton since like Ableton 4, and I think it's on 12 now. So it's like you get used to a workflow, and because you get used to it, you get really fast at it. And so then you try to switch to a different workflow, and it gets clunky and it gets frustrating. You're like, oh, I'm just going to go back because I'm so much faster there. And I've had friends that started with Logic, tried to switch to Ableton, felt the same way. Yeah, so I think it's the same with whether it's the Oxy or the Hapax or whatever you start on. If you get fast on it from the start, that's going to be your thing, because that's the most important. What's your opinion on Cirklon? I think Cirklon is very cool. I think it was the first of these really kind of, interesting, deep, capable sequencers. I also think it is wildly expensive for what it does. I think that you can do all that it does and more with these other ones that we're talking about for significantly less money. So I think Cirklon has become kind of like a 909, right? Like a vintage 909. It's that thing that if you can afford it, sure, why not? Why wouldn't you have it? But it's super crazy expensive, and you're not really getting much that's so different and so usable that it justifies the extra expense. But it has a huge fan base like any of these things do. So whatever works for you is kind of my general message. It doesn't really matter. It's important that you find a good workflow for you. So I would say the same with the shirt line. Let's see, if you had the Bohm and planned on getting the Shakmat, kick, and hats, which would you get first? I think it depends on a couple things. What kind of music are you making? How much space you have in your rack? And yeah, and kind of what your needs are. So, you know, if you've got a relatively small rack and you're just kind of expanding it out, I would say go with the battering ram and the Archer's rig. Those are great. If you're going to go the direction of the Bohm and you're playing, you know, like big room techno and you need a lot of rumble or whatever, well, then you might want to just go with the Bohm because you're going to need that at some point anyway, if that's the kind of music you're making. But if you're not making that kind of music, you're going to get every kick sound that you've ever wanted and ever imagined out of the battering ram. So you could kind of stick with that one. You don't need to go, you know, all the way in the other direction. So I think really it's a personal preference thing and it's a workflow thing. And as I said at the beginning, it's a what kind of music are you making thing. You know, it's like if you're making hip hop, you want an 808, not a 909. And it's kind of the same with this. Like if you're making stuff where you need a rumble and you're gonna have to create it anyway, the Bohm I think is the best way to get there. If you just need a really powerful kick, then the Bohm is kind of overkill. Then the battering ram is gonna get you a really powerful, amazing sounding kick. So whatever. Right, let's see. Sequencing is very personal depending on the music you want to do and also shapes your music as well. Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, and it depends also on the workflow you enjoy. So, for example, I don't know if EasyBot's still on here, but his workflow of writing tracks that he will perform live lends itself so well to the Elektron workflow because much like a tracker, you have individual control by step over so many different deep things, right? So you can micro control every single step in so many different ways. So if that's your workflow, then you're gonna really lean towards that one. Whereas if you want to do something that's totally generative, well, then you're going to be interested in things, you know, whether it's, you know, modular ones that are like Euclidean or Euclidean circles or something like that, where you're going to get a whole bunch of really interesting generative types of sequences that might lend itself to that particular workflow. My workflow is I like control and then being able to use things when they're, use the randomness in specific ways rather than just going all random or going all kind of micromanaged. So I think it's like every one of us has the ability now, because of all this cool gear that's out there, to figure out how our brain works best, how our creative process works best, and find the right combination of devices that works for us, right? So like, for example, when I'm sequencing drums, I like to use the Elektron sequencer. When I'm sequencing melodic stuff, even if I'm using the synth engines or samples from the Elektron devices, I still sequence them from the Oxy One because I like how it sequences melodically, but I also like to be able to parameter lock things when I'm sequencing drums. So it's like, find that right combination for you of that kind of aligns best with your workflow. And that's going to be the best gear for you. And that's why I partially annoyed, but it partially just makes me laugh at all of like the shit posters whenever something new comes out and everybody's like, oh, this is the worst, this is the best, this is horrible, this is awesome, this is whatever. It's like, if they would just put on the end of each one of those sentences, for me, this is the best for me, this is not gonna work for me, whatever, I would give it a lot more credibility. But when you're trying to broadly say this is the best or this is the worst, it's hard for me to take you seriously because you don't know anything about me. So you don't know what's the best for me. You're just kind of broadlining out there. This thing sucks. And it's like, well, actually it doesn't suck. It may suck for your workflow, but like, if you're a guitar player a saxophone sucks because it's not a guitar. So you don't have the right tool for what you want to do. So, and I think a lot of this stuff is hardware is that. And I think, unfortunately, people have gotten into this mentality of everything should do everything. It should always be better than the last thing. And sometimes it's just a new creative way to do something, or it's a new combination of workflows, or it's a new flexibility in how you set it up that creates something really cool that you can use. And it's not that it's like, this one's better, this one's worse. You know, it's just, it all comes down to you and your preferences. Let's see here. James, been using the shock mount high pass to keep the mix clean at various points. Great for keeping sounds clean. Totally agree. Using the carbon with the battering ram. That's cool. Interesting. Use shock mount high pass the same way. Cool. Oh, EasyBot is there still. So you see, you come up on these streams even when you're not here, Matt. You come up all the time. We talk about you all the time. Let's see what else. What's going on? Unknown artist. He pops in. Good to see ya. Let's see. Sneaky good use of 2 HP. Yeah, if you're gonna use a little high pass like that, the 2 HP ones are pretty sweet. But yeah. If only the Deluge had more CV gate outs and better LFOs with its clip view, it would be a great techno sequencer. Yeah, it's fine. I had a Deluge for quite a while, and I liked the Deluge for the fact that it was, it still is. It was for me. I don't have it anymore, but I like the fact that it was a true all-in-one. So I used it a lot when I traveled for work. And I would just take it battery powered on the plane to just kind of mess around with stuff. It was really fun for that. I liked that a lot. And I like that you could use samples or synths or whatever. I never really got into it as a sequencer to sequence other things because it felt like it was relatively limited compared to other sequencers that I was using. But yeah, it's cool. My one big gripe with the Deluge from a workflow standpoint is kind of like the Roland workflow that I was mentioning before. Like if you take like the Roland, the MC707 and the Deluge as kind of like the all-in-one boxes, they both have this crazy list of features that they can do. They can do so many things, and they're really deep, and synths and samples and arrangements and all of this stuff. And then they have a screen that's this big and like 2 knobs to control all of that depth of stuff. So then it's like either shift combinations or menu diving or whatever. So it makes it almost impossible to do things quickly live. And that was the thing that got me with things like the Deluge and the MC707, both of which I had and got rid of, was that it wasn't a question of they couldn't do the things. It was a question of I couldn't do the things with them fast enough and immediate enough for them to be a part of my live performance stuff. And if it wasn't going to be part of my live performance stuff, then it's like, okay, well then I don't need an all-in-one box because it doesn't need to be portable. I can just, do stuff in my studio. I've got plenty of gear. It's not a matter of I need the thing. So for me, if something's going to do a lot in one box, it's because I'm going to travel with it, because I need to take a lot with me in a small amount of space. And that's where things like the Deluge and the MC707, I was like, geez, like it's really not a workflow that does it for me in that circumstance. Very much like I was talking about with studio modular gear, things that take a long time to dial in, it doesn't mean that they're bad. It just means that they're not, they don't lend themselves to improvised live performance. And so I don't use them live. And so then portability is no longer a plus. I'm not going to get a portable battery powered device so that it can sit on the desk in my studio all the time. That doesn't make any sense to me. In that case, I will have synth and gear and modular and all that kind of stuff if it's going to just sit in the studio. So anyway, my thoughts on those. Happy to be here even when I'm not. You're always here in spirit, man. Let's see, got so many new views and performance stuff with the open source. Yeah, I mean, the open source thing happened after I sold mine, and I was really excited to see that because I think it's always better. I always wish that the 1010 guys would open source their stuff, because I think that there would be so many people that would come up with really cool and interesting ways to use the gear. But it's been cool to see what people have come up with in that. The other thing though is the more capability that it gets, the more stuff that it can do, the more kind of button combos and things. And then you've got that whole grid. And if you're in a dark place performing live, you can't see it very well. Or if you're on a dark plane, you can't really see it very well. There's not like the backlight. So again, it comes down to preference of workflow. Like that's the thing. All of this gear is so good and it all does so many cool things that it just comes down to a preference of workflow. Like for me, if it's going to be a portable all-in-one groove box for like messing around on the plane, then it needs to have a certain set of features for me that make sense. And if it's going to be a live performance thing, it has to have a certain set. And if not, if it's going to be a studio thing, all that's kind of out the window and it can be kind of whatever it needs to be. So anyway, let's see. Hot take, I might be wrong, but with AI producing music from one sentence, live performances would become more popular. That is a hot take that I totally agree with. I've been talking about that a lot to a lot of people. And Carl Cox has been on the leading edge of this. He's one of my favorite DJs, and he's had this massive career because he's always one step ahead of what everybody's gonna do. And that was how he kind of switched from, being, a drum and bass guy to a gabber guy to a bit more open format to techno to playing house and back to techno. And he's always kind of on the leading edge. And when everybody catches up to him, he moves and he goes to the next thing. He's kind of the opposite of a trend follower, right? He's as soon as something becomes the trend, he leaves it on purpose. And he has been going slowly between DJing to like a hybrid DJ hardware setup to now more than half of his gigs now are 100% live performances with no DJing. I mean, he does have clips and stems and stuff that he's using in Ableton, but it's not, he doesn't have decks. He's not playing on CDJs. He's not doing that part of it. So it's all live performance. So much so that his stage, what was it called? The Revolution stage at Ultra Music Festival this year was 100% live acts for the first time. So that for me is justification of this thought that I've been having for a while, that live performance is going to become more and more important. And I totally agree with you that it's because of AI. And the thing is that AI can write music, okay? So that just by the nature of it devalues music production, because then as a music listener, whether you care or not, you won't necessarily know if something was made by a person or a machine or some combination thereof. So there's less value intrinsically in produced music at that point. Then if you take that to the next live performance area, which is DJing, if AI is making the music that the DJ is playing, and you can also, not only can you write a song from a sentence, you can also mix DJ sets already with AI. You can say, I want a 60-minute set of, ranging from this BPM to this BPM of music in the style of these 5 artists that I really like. And I want it to play things that are not, that are new within the last month, but that have not made it into the Beatport Top 100, but that sound in that same style. So you can sound a little bit edgy because you're not playing the same stuff. And I want to mix in 10% of the tracks. I want them to be Beatport Top 10 tracks in this genre. Go. And then you get a pre-mix set that you can load onto a USB stick, you can plug into a CDJ, and you can press play, and you can pretend like you're mixing. So because of that, it devalues the DJ performance as well. Once people start to catch on to the fact that that's possible, not that everybody's doing it, but that it's possible to do, then all of a sudden you have this doubt. Is this person I'm watching actually DJing? Did this artist actually write this music? And when there's that doubt, there's less value. What AI can't do yet is improvised live performance, live in front of a crowd. You could do AI generated tracks that you can divide into stems using AI software now. And then you can take those stems and you can load those into hardware boxes and you can press play and then you can mute and unmute and fiddle with effects. And you're still not writing the music, not performing the music. You're just assembling it at that point. So that's another thing. Will that be real? But when you get to the live performance improvised side of things, then you have, it's much more difficult, right? Because if you can see the person doing the thing, you see them turn a knob and you hear the sound change, that's going to go up in value because people are going to be able to look at this and go, oh, okay, I can see what's going on. Just like if you're watching a band and you can see a guitar player solo, you know that they're doing that for real, right? Until they're, decades from now when there's, or maybe 2 years from now when there's robots that can do it. But for right now, this live performance bit is only gaining in value the more AI devalues all of the other stuff, right? This becomes where there's value in the electronic music world, right? So I totally agree with the idea that, with the hot take, that AI is going to make live performances more popular. I totally agree. Now, what this depends on, which is a big, ginormous variable, is the audience. If the audience cares whether or not a human made the music or is performing the music, then live performance will go up in value. If the audience doesn't care and all they care about is that the event is fun and the music is good and the vibe and the party's good and the whatever, then it won't matter. It won't matter if if a human made it, if AI made it, if it was a generated set, if it's a live set, if it's a fake set, none of that will matter. And again, I'm not judging whether or not that's right or not, or whether that's okay or not, because way back in the day, the DJ was hidden over in the corner and it could have very well been just a playlist if the technology existed at that time. All the people cared about was that they were having a good time at the event. And that's ultimately the most important for a lot of these events. So there's there's a shift in value 100% towards live performance, whether it's electronic live performance, whether it's, guitars and saxophones and whatever. But there's definitely going to be a shift back to that the more AI is involved with things. So I think that will be, I think you're right on the money with that. So just listen to Rick Beato interview Les Claypool. He also said that people like to see artists get out there and take risks like jamming, something AI can't do. I agree. And I think that, but again, it's key. What you just said right there is kind of what I was just mentioning. The key is where you said that Les Claypool had said that people like to see this. If people don't care, there won't be any more value in live performance. It won't change. But if people care, if people want to see that, then it will have a thing. One of the things where I still have a big question mark with all of this is if you see how popular DJs get right now with using automatically synced gear, which I'm not ripping on at all. Use the technology that's available. But when you're playing pre-recorded music and you're using gear that automatically syncs the gear for you, your job becomes song selection. And if you can make people have a great party, more power to you. But with all of those things, there has been no devaluation in the popularity or the prices that those DJs can demand. And that's because up until now, the crowd doesn't care. Like they want to spend hundreds of dollars to go to the Sphere in Las Vegas and watch the show and watch Anima play 2 MIDI controllers synced to Ableton underneath the plexiglass of his controller. and think that that's a live show. It's not, but they don't care, and it's not a bad thing. I'm not being critical. What I'm saying is they are willing to pay for that, even though it's not a live show, even though they're saying that it's live, but it's not a live show. So that shows that they don't mind. And if they don't mind, the value proposition won't change. It's just going to be about visuals and about, how cool the show looked and, explosions and pyrotechnics and whatever. But I think there's going to be a switch, a backlash. I remember, I'm old enough to remember back in the days when rock music shifted from pyrotechnics and explosions and hair metal bands to grunge, which was very stripped back and very kind of at the core, just live music without all the show. And I think that there's going to be a cycle like that with electronic music as well. I think that people are getting to the end of their love affair with visuals and explosions and pyrotechnics, and you're not going to be able to get bigger than Tomorrowland and the Sphere and stuff like that. So you have to go somewhere else in order to get some interest. And I think the interest is going to be in the live side, I think, but I could be wrong. So let's see here. What's next? I wonder if there will be gear in the near future that has built-in AI algorithms. Yeah, I'm sure there will. Why? I don't see why there wouldn't be. I think it's just a matter of how you use it. Because I think what we're talking about is two different things. Using AI to help generate is kind of like using randomness in a sequencer. Like you're letting the machine do part of the thing so that it can give you ideas that you can then play with. If AI is making the music completely start to finish, I think that's a totally different thing. So I think there's two different things. So anyway, pretend DJs. Yep, too funny. I think MPC had a plugin with AI. I think so too. Definitely seen AI features in VSTs. Yes. And a lot of it's not really AI. Like it seems like anything where a computer does anything now gets tagged as AI, but it's not really, they're not really models that are learning things in order to make things. It's just a more intelligent way of using randomness or searching or combining things together, but they're not really learning, right, from what you do. There is Rainer Zonneveld has been doing this tour where he worked with a software engineer to design an AI learning model, and he loaded in his whatever thousands of tracks of his own personal production to train the model, and now he's playing live on stage with the AI version of himself in the computer to live generate stuff in his style that was only trained on his music, which I think is a super clever, creative way to use AI live. But check out Rainer Zonneveld and what he's doing with that. It's very, very cool. All right. Let's see. Such valuable information. Cool. PJ, what's PJ? What did I miss? PJs. I don't know. I think my brother's a PJ. I don't know what that is. Carl Cox is a legend. Improvisation can't be replaced. I totally agree. Good evening. Just join now. We'll watch the whole stream later. Sweet. Well, welcome. Glad to have you. It's always fun for me to pass my Saturday afternoon with you guys because it's raining outside and storming, so very nice. Electric Universe's Laser Harp live performance was absolutely amazing. Something Jean-Michel Jarre was doing ages ago. Yeah, and that kind of stuff is going to be, I see there's a lot of really interesting kind of interactive stuff. You mentioned Kink before. One of the things I love that he does is he's got like a ring that he can do percussion with. He's got things that he hands out to the audience so that they can join in the writing of what's going on. So all of that stuff is just going to have more and more and more value as AI starts doing more and more and more of the music creation. The writing, like produced music like I said, will have less and less value the more it can be done by AI at a high level, because the audience will then just assume. It's kind of like, if you saw, like, again, dating myself here, but the big evolution between vinyl to cassette to CD to streaming, or, to downloads to streaming, has completely devalued music from a monetary standpoint, because it used to be when you bought music, you bought a thing and you had a tangible object. But as soon as it got to the point where, it progressively got cheaper, then a song was 99 cents, and that took some more of the value out of it. And you could get any music you wanted anytime from anywhere. But as soon as it took the step over into streaming, instantly from the consumer standpoint, music has no more monetary value at all. Because you say music is all free. Because you don't think about the $10 a month you pay for whatever your streaming service is. You just think, I get any song I want from anywhere in the world of any genre instantly anywhere that I am for free. So now there's no monetary value to that music for the consumer. Then there's no longer creative value the more that music is made by AI. So then they're going to say, well, all of this music's probably AI anyway, so why should I care about any of these artists? Right? Because they don't know if it's a real human being, if it's a fake artist, if it's a profile created for an AI generating whatever. So instantly, no more artistic value of that produced music and that released track. So now it's like, what has value? And it can be, the music will have a certain value. If it's good quality, that will still have some value, but not for an artist. It will still have some value that the audience likes it, but that's it. And so that changes that whole value thing. And so then all of a sudden you find yourself in the live performance world. And it's like, okay, well, for the people who care about a human actually making the music, and they want to make sure that they're seeing that creative process, that's going to then become an improvised live performance world. Whether it's techno, whether it's bluegrass, whether it's hip hop, whether it's whatever, they're going to want to see artists doing the thing, and not pressing buttons and tweaking filters, but actually making the music live. So I think that's just going to go up in value, just to replace the lack of value of the rest of it. So anyway, let's see where we at. Good night. Battery's burnt. All right, have a good night. Different stream this evening. Yeah, it was different. Wanted to just hang out and chat instead. What's up, Herbie? Good to see ya. Welcome, welcome. Pretend DJs. PJs. Got it. I get it. 12 a.m. in the UK. Sounds late to me. I don't know. That's like when I get started in my creative moments, is at about midnight. Let's see. Also now people rarely listen to the same track a second time because there's so much music. Yeah, I saw a thing not too long ago that said that across all genres, there are 750,000 new tracks released per week across all genres and platforms. So it's impossible for things to get through unless you have marketing, unless you're getting that stuff out there in front of things. And it's impossible for things to have value when there's, basically 1 million tracks a week. So 52 million tracks a year coming out. It's really difficult for anything to have value in that kind of a world. So anyway, that's the real challenge. The other thing that's really interesting, and we talk about this a bit in my production course, but listening context is really important. Like where music is going to be, I hate using the word consumed, but that's kind of the word of the day. Where are people going to listen to that music and how are they going to listen to it? And that kind of determines how it gets written in this day and age. The artists are shifting the way they write in order to line up better with different platforms. And I'll give you an example. If your whole thing with music is streams and you want to get onto streaming platforms like Spotify and you want to try to get your music streamed a lot, and that's what you're kind of focusing on, you need to focus on the first 15 or 20 seconds of your track at the most and have it grab attention immediately. Like, gone are the days of tracks with an intro that took a little while to get going and then became these amazing things over time. Because if your thing doesn't grab people's interest in the first 10, 15, 20 seconds, they're going to skip and they're going to go on to the next track. So you have to have something in that first 10 seconds that goes, oh, this is pretty cool. I'm going to keep listening to this one. Because if you don't, it doesn't matter how good the rest of your track is, they'll never get to it, right? So, and yeah, I just saw the TikTok thing. That was exactly where I was going next. If you're going to use TikTok as the way your audience discovers your music needs to have 15-second segments that are usable within TikTok. And that's what you would want to upload to the TikTok platform, is this, 15 seconds that will allow them to use that as the soundtrack to a video. So it can't be 15 seconds that all sound the same. It has to be 15 seconds with a bunch of things that happen. So instantly you don't have this kind of patience arc in your music. It has to be quick in order for that platform. Now, if your music is going to be listened to by kind of audio files and it's going to be like listen to an album start to finish, well, then you can write your music in a totally different way. But then you're going to have to think about, okay, where's this music going to get discovered? Because no one's going to ever listen to it on a streaming platform, and no one's ever going to listen to it on a social media platform if it can't be chopped into those little bits. So then it has to be then you have to put a lot more effort into marketing your music so that you can get the word out there that you have this thing that's out there. So you have to become the marketer, where if you're doing it through, Spotify playlists or whatever, they do a lot of your marketing for you. But if it's going to be, you're going to be the next Aphex Twin and your stuff is going to be listened on, great stereos at home or amazing headphones and listen all the way through an album, your Aphex Twin or your Burial or you're one of those artists. Okay, cool. That's great. Just know that your work is going to be cut out for you to get that music ever heard by anybody. You have to market it heavily wherever you want it to be heard. If you just post it on Bandcamp, no one will ever find it, right? So you have to do a lot of marketing to get it out there. And it doesn't matter how good it is. That's the problem. It could be amazing, but if it's amazing and nobody ever hears it, it's like if a tree falls in the woods kind of thing. Like, it's amazing, but it never had a chance to be amazing because nobody ever heard it. So it's important to think about how your music's going to be heard and listened to when you're thinking about making music, for sure. And this goes for like types of sound systems as well. And this is another thing we talk about in my performance course, is that if you're making music for DJs, it's going to be a different format. You need an intro that they can mix into. You need an outro that they can mix out of. You don't want to be changing tempo or key at the beginning or the end, because that makes it hard to mix into and nobody wants to hear that. You need tracks that sound amazing in mono, because most club sound systems are mono. Not a wildly known fact, but most club sound systems are mono. And so your stuff has to sound good mono. And even if the club sound system is not mono, it has to sound good in mono, because if things are out of phase, you'll get phase canceling where the waves cross in the room. So you might be standing somewhere and all of a sudden there's no bass. There's no kick and sub, because those are phase canceled where you are. So you don't get to hear those. So all of a sudden the song sounds shitty. And when the DJ finds out about that, they'll never play that song again, right? But DJ music has to sound good in stereo as well, because DJs are listening on their headphones when they're deciding if they're going to buy or download a track to play. So it has to sound amazing to catch their attention, right, as they scan through it. But that will be, my joke with my students is that that's the last time your song will ever be heard in stereo, is once the DJ decides to buy it or download it, because then it will always be heard on a mono system in a club, unless they're playing huge festivals and there's stereo systems there. So listening context is really important, along with all of the AI stuff as well. So I don't know, a lot to think about. I kind of went off on a ramble there, but whatever. Let's see, what else? Vinyl has a bit of a resurgence. Yeah, there's kind of a retro thing. Yeah, and it's expensive, and it will be. Like, again, vinyl's like, my whole life, my father used to restore antique cars. He would restore like Model A Fords from like the 20s and 30s. And he loved doing that. He loved taking them out for a drive or whatever. And it wasn't because they were the best car or whatever, but it was fun and it was a cool retro thing. Vinyl's kind of like getting to be like that. Like there's people that love listening to vinyl. They love having a collection that they can see and touch and feel. They love reading liner notes. They love, you know, putting the needle on the record and hearing the crackle of vinyl and stuff. So there's this kind of like retro feel to it. And I think that that's, people are, again, like the live performance thing, when people get fed up with everything being digital and pristine and perfect, they want to go back to something that was like a simpler time. And I think that's probably what's driving the vinyl resurgence. Anything you're currently obsessed with lately, gear, music, or otherwise? I mean, gear-wise, Modular. Like, I'm still relatively new to Modular, and I just love it. I love the fact that I get to make my own instrument and then play it. And if I want to change something, like last night, I was building this case. I built it, I patched it, I started playing it. I'm like, nope, this isn't what I want. So I unpatched it and changed a bunch of modules. So it's like, I love the fact that I can do that with Modular. It's just super, super fun, and would recommend, if you can, do it. It's a good time. Music-wise, there's a group of kind of, I don't want to say up and coming because they're very popular in Europe, but techno DJ producers, live acts, which are kind of part of this newer generation that I really, really love. I think that there's some really, really quality kind of hypnotic techno out there, combined with groove, and a little bit of hard groove and all of that stuff, and it's really amazing. So on the more senior side of this group would be people like Rod Hadd and Dasha Rush and artists like that. And then in like the newer up and coming guys like Schlar or Schler, I can't remember what it is, Schlar, Marone, Quelza, Norbach, Renee Wise. There's a lot of artists in that group that are really, for me, what they're doing with techno today is really kind of not only honoring the history of where kind of the techno came from and kind of the mentality and the vibe of it, but also kind of pushing it forward with production techniques and, you know, new ways to perform and combining styles and really, really cool, interesting sound design and all that stuff. So yeah, I mean, like there's that whole group that are really, really fantastic. And, you know, a lot of them are kind of, they've gained a lot of popularity, you know, particularly in Europe, way less so here in the US, where the norm of like the big artists is still, it kind of went from EDM to becoming like this EDM version of techno that's like really super hard, really super fast, short tracks, you know, kind of short attention span techno, rather than kind of the longer vibey, groovy all night party techno, which is what these guys are. And so that's why it lends itself more to a European crowd than North America. So yes. Where are we at here? Stream seems better cost than buying them. So stream seems better cost than buying them, unfortunately. I'm not sure. I think you were talking about music goes, but yeah, I mean, it's way better for the consumer from a money standpoint, but as soon as something costs $0, then it has zero value. So that's where I think there's been a sad kind of loss of the end listener values the music less than they used to, because it's more accessible and cheaper. So there's no kind of barrier to it, so they can switch really quickly, so they don't have to kind of have any value. I remember buying albums and sitting and listening all the way through, and then you would put it on in your car and cassette or CD or whatever, and you'd play it all the way through, and then you'd switch to another one and play it all the way through. So it was a different way of listening to music. Now it's you know, the tracks are kind of all over the place because it's based on your playlist that you've created and kind of curated for yourself. And when you're curating those things, you're able to skip through things much more easily. So again, like I mentioned before, it changes the way the music is made or should be made. All right, how do you feel about Toneberg considering you're not really into samples? I mean, I'm interested in it, and I like the fact that it's not your typical kind of manage the samples kind of thing. I love that you can sample in whole instruments and then just use that as an instrument rather than individual one-shots that you then have to manipulate. So I'm really interested in that idea, but like I love my Digitact as well, and it's a sampler. So it's not that I don't like samples, I just don't use them for a lot of things because I don't like sample management. But with this one, it seems like there's a way to get around the sample management thing because it feels like there's a lot more, it acts a lot more like a synth, even though it's sample based. So I like that. But for me with the Toneberg, like I said, it's not so much the sound sources as it is what you can do with them that's really interesting. The effects, the buses, and you know, subtracks and multiple outputs, and all of those things are really interesting to me. Whether it's a synth or a sample based thing, that's less important. The fact that you can do all of those things, I think is really, really, really interesting. So I love the analog rhythm because of multiple outputs, and I use samples in it as well as the synth engine. So it's not that I don't like samples, I just don't like sample management. So if you can take the click and drag file folder part of sample management out of it, I'm super into it. But when you can't, it's really difficult to do. So. See, some artists will add TikTok from the parts. Totally. Yep. However, I still love watching a live musician. Yes, me too. Love watching yourself. And yeah, thank you. But yeah, I love watching live musician too, especially in the electronic world. I mean, like if I can't tell you how often I will put on YouTube, like when I'm just messing around in my studio or building a new rack or whatever, I'll put something on YouTube that's live sets and I'll watch because I really love to see what they're doing, see their performance. If I just wanted to listen to music, I'd just pop in my headphones and listen to music. But I love to watch artists perform. I love to watch them make the music live. That for me is amazing. So. Anyway, let's see. Totally agree about the audience requirements. However, there's a large degree of us that love making music, which is what, yeah. So, and I totally agree with you. And that's something that's really important. And that's where this comes up a lot in my courses is that don't focus on output, on the product, on the end product, right? On, you know, I'm going to make this track. Enjoy the process of making music, whether it's performing it live, whether it's making it in a DAW, whether it's some hybrid workflow, it doesn't really matter. If you enjoy it, that's all that matters. Because as sad as it is, that music will probably never go anywhere for any of us, right? When there's almost 1 million tracks a week coming out, getting those tracks anywhere is really difficult to do. So if you don't love the process, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment all the time because it's very unlikely that the end result will ever get anywhere, either monetarily or recognition or fame or whatever you want. So all you've got left is the act of creating art. And that needs to be enough because that's all most of us are ever going to get. So enjoy what it is, so that you're not just constantly being let down by the fact that you don't become famous or that you don't get a bunch of recognition or whatever, because that's a little unrealistic when there's 1 million tracks a week coming out. So focus on you, on making it fun, enjoy it yourself, right? And if you're playing a show, make it fun for you and for the people that are there. It's the best you can do, right? So what else? Schler's a great shout. I agree. What are your thoughts on Micro Rack? They demo their gear at Superbooth, cheaper options. Yeah, I mean, again, this goes kind of what I was just saying about producing music. You have to enjoy the process. So there's this whole thing about things getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and boxes that do more and more and more and more. And unfortunately, what that does often is it may add some portability convenience, but what it does is it sucks a lot of the fun out of it. You know, like I demoed the Teenage Engineering, the TX6 mixer. Amazing mixer. Like, it's really powerful, feature rich, really, really good mixer, but it's too small. So it made it not fun to use. You couldn't use it. You just had to kind of set it there and have it be a thing that mixed your audio. But then at that point, you don't need all the functionality that it has. So I think a lot happened. So when I saw the micro rack, like, it's cool, but it's micro, like, it's small. Yes, it's cheaper, but it's much smaller. And so it loses a bit of that, that kind of hands-on fun to play part. But yeah, it sounds good. It does, you know, but again, like the Roland stuff, it sounds amazing, but it doesn't have that same kind of fun, tactile playability that other stuff has. So it all comes down to what you want it for. If what you want it for is the output, or if what you want it for is being cheap, or if you need something really, really small, then things like that would work great. I try to find that balance between things that do the thing I want them to do, but I want it to do it in a way that I enjoy playing, that I have fun playing with, right? So yeah, I think it comes back down to personal preference of workflow, totally. What else? Here's another project with Alerico called Funkasol. Oh yeah, Schlar and Alerico together is great. Alerico's another one who's really good solo as well, so I would check him out. Another one that's really great as well, part of this whole new group, is Fadi Mohem. If you ever check him out, is also amazing, really good. Jacko is another one who's really, really good. There's a bunch that are in that new kind of group, and I would say I love listening to them because I love that they're building on the foundation of the mentality of techno music, right? And that for me is great. You know, I always love Jeff Mills' quote that techno is music made with sounds from the future. And so it shouldn't matter when that future is. So if it's 2025, it should be sounds for the future, right? So all of a sudden, we need to be looking forward while at the same time building off of what's been done in the past. So I think that's cool. And I see all of those artists I mentioned, they're all pushing boundaries in all sorts of different directions, sound design wise, which is for me one of the most important parts of techno, is sound design. So I love to listen to their stuff. So definitely check out all those artists that I mentioned if you haven't yet. So anyway, what is this? Sorry, trying to type on my iPad and keep pressing send as opposed to delete. Yeah, it's that touchscreen thing, dude. I'm telling you. But anyway, what other questions? If you've got other questions, pop them in here. We've got a few more minutes so we can still hang out before I've got to go do some other stuff. But love to answer any questions that you guys have about anything. You've probably heard more than you care to my opinions about stuff, but that's all good. But yeah, if there's anything particular, technical, something dumb about, you know, travel to gigs, or I don't know. It's always fun to get like the interesting kind of travel hacks, like to be able to do things when you travel with travel for shows as well, like what you do with gear. And I think I've showed a few times on here, like I have things like a power strip that has US plugs in the power strip, but on the end of the cable, it's a European plug. So I can just plug into one thing and then I don't need adapters for everything. But all those kind of things are a lot of fun too. What's a small random thing you're passionate about that most people might overlook? I don't know. I mean, I have a lot. Are you talking specifically about music and performing music? Because I could talk about all kinds of other stuff. But as far as music goes, you guys may have heard me talk about this before on here, but I get really passionate about the final sound of a live performance, and because of that, the small thing that I get really passionate about is saturation. And I think that it gets overlooked all the time, that everybody, I don't know why, but people get obsessed with compression on their main, which I think is a terrible idea. And I think that people should not do that for live performance unless you're doing it per track in a pre-done, preset way. But as far as a full live performance, it's like compression, I think, is a horrible idea, but saturation, it's the secret sauce to make things sound amazing and to get that full, finished, finalized kind of, mastered track sound from a live performance. The key is saturation. So that one for me. And okay, so let's see, music scene gear. For me, it's bass in the system. Yeah, and so if you want to talk about bass, I actually had a friend of mine, Craig, who is in these chats sometimes, so he may be in here, Craig Henneveld. But he was talking about, and I hadn't heard it put this way, but it's such a great way to describe it, talking about, particularly for techno music and particularly on big systems, talking about low-end pressure. And some of that can be created by compression, some of it can be created by sound selection and mixing and saturation and limiting and whatever, but getting the pressure of the low end rather than just a sound of the low end is really important for things to sound good in a nightclub, whether it's live or whether it's a produced track that's being played by a DJ. So I totally agree with you on the low end bass thing. Oh, one other thing too, that's a small thing that I'm passionate about is coffee when I travel. It's a dumb thing, but coffee is my vice, so whatever. Can I see a poster for Carl Cox in the back? What gig was that? Yes, you can. That right back there over my shoulder, the red poster, which looks purple because of my light. That was from Space Ibiza in, what year was that? 2014 maybe? So like 10, 11 years ago, something like that. And that was, it was one of the shows that I played DJing. I used to do Carl's, his Revolution night at Space Ibiza on Wednesdays when Space was still there. I played that a few years in a row, and this was from that party, which was a fantastic lineup. I don't know if you can see it on the screen, but it was Carl Cox, Nicole Mudaber, D-Tron, Nick Fanciulli, Sebastian Leger, Uner. Let's see, who else? I can't see everybody else. But there was a whole bunch of us that were the fine print on that poster. So yeah, that's what that show was from. Space Ibiza in 2014. What else? Do you play any acoustic instruments? Yeah, I grew up playing guitar. You probably can't see, but right over there behind that rack, I have a Fender Strat. Yeah, I grew up playing guitar when I was in high school and college, and after I was. It was a weird time musically for me because I was playing guitar and singing in like blues rock cover bands. So we were playing like, Eric Clapton and Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and George Thorogood and all that kind of stuff. And some, like all covers. And then while I was doing that and playing in those bands live, all the music that I was listening to when I wasn't either at band practice or playing shows was all electronic. So I was, back when I was in high school, it was New Order and Depeche Mode and The Cure and whatever. And then that developed into Ministry and Front 242 and Nitzareb and Frontline Assembly and KMFDM and all that. 9 Inch Nails, all that stuff. And then that all kind of developed into my love for techno. Like that whole electronic thing just kind of kept going into that as I moved to Europe. So I lived in Europe through most of the 90s. And so it was all kind of influenced by all the stuff that was kind of coming from Germany at that time. And yeah, so that was where that came from. But yes, I grew up playing guitar in bands, also played drums, played bass, sang. I've always been a horrible keyboard player. So I don't do that at all, but yeah. Let's see. I hate it when bass doesn't go low enough. I get that, totally. Try the Golden Master, take a look if you haven't. Yeah, I have taken a look at it, and I'm actually thinking about putting that as one of the 1Us in my new case, only because I want to use it for the, to mono my low end, mono my bass. So taking that lowest frequency band, the Golden Master, and doing mono, which is really the only thing that I would use it for. Right now I'm using the, what's it called? The Libre Legio from Noise Engineering as kind of my end of chain module in my case, because it has saturator compressor limiter. And so I don't really use the compressor, but the saturator I use, and then limiting to gain everything up. So the only thing I'm really missing from kind of a mastering chain is that bass mono thing. And that's what I want to use the Golden Master for. So anyway, but yeah, saturation is the key. Unknown artist, saturation is the magical secret sauce to making your mix sound good. Take any compressor that you have on your main off, turn it off, move it away, unplug it, take the compressor away, add saturation, and tame your limits yourself rather than trying to let everything go wild into your final mix and then trying to compress it, because you'll just mess up your mix. So try to make sure that you don't have peaks at the individual voice level, the individual sound level, and then drive a quality mix into a quality saturator, and it will sound way better. Let's see. Crepes. I thought I heard you mention last stream you have the Libre Legio at the very end of your chain, even after the meta. Something about the noise gate. Yes, so I do have it there. I do use the noise gate a little bit, only because there's a couple of really loud modules in my case. The Endorphins Ghost in particular is crazy loud. So I just use the lowest setting of the noise gate just to get that little bit of randomness out of the bottom. But I don't really use the noise gate much. But yeah, the Libre Legio that's the thing for me, end of chain, because it has a really good sounding saturator, and the limiter also sounds really good as well. So that is most of what I need on my end of chain now. Tea is your thing. So I'm a tea person too. I make coffee all day, and then I drink tea a lot at night. I always take like a hot tea to bed, and I have it on my nightstand. I don't know if you may have seen this on one of my previous streams, but I had throat cancer a few years ago, and it made it so that like my mouth gets really super dry at night because I don't produce as much saliva now because of the radiation. And so because of that, I need something to drink all night, and it's something warm is great. And so I am huge that I always have mint tea. I'm a big fan of mint tea. So I always have mint tea on my nightstand all night long. So yeah. Yes, tea has definitely been making strides against coffee. Yeah. I still love coffee. I mean, coffee is my vice. I'm a morning, noon, and night coffee drinker. I drink it from the time I wake up until after dinner when I'm ready to go to bed, and then I take my tea to bed with me. But whenever I travel, one of the things, let me see if I can reach this without my headphones coming off. Maybe. Yes. So my backpack that I take on all of my trips when I travel, inside my backpack, inside the inside pockets, I always have mint tea, just so you know. And then I started traveling with, a while ago, I got this thing. I don't know if you've ever seen the Outen, it's like a rechargeable battery powered espresso maker. I actually don't need that when I go to Europe, because there's usually Nespresso machines in every hotel that I go to. But whenever I travel here in the US, the coffee in hotel rooms is just absolutely horrific. It's usually like a coffee tea bag it's just gross. And so I bring this machine where I can just bring like either ground coffee or Nespresso pods if I want to go really quick. And you just put water into it and press a button, and it recharges by USB-C. And it makes pretty decent espresso, battery powered. So I do that. Sometimes I'll do that on flights too. If I want a good coffee on a plane, I can just have that there. So another little secret travel hack for my days of traveling. What else? What headphones, IEMs do you use when you play live? These are the IEMs that I use when I play live. These are Sennheiser, I can't remember what they are, the something 100s. So yeah, they're not expensive. They're like cheap ones. I'm actually in the market right now. I'm trying to get some IEM companies to send me some to test so I can show, because a lot of people have been asking about IEMs. So I want to do a test, but I haven't been able to find companies that want to send them to me yet. So that way I can also test them for myself and figure out what I want to use. But so far I've really loved the Sennheisers. I may end up getting one of the higher end versions of this same one just because I really like them. These were kind of a test thing to see if I liked IEMs, and now I love them. So I couldn't play without them. Like at my show at Knobcon this week, there was no monitoring and we were like 6 feet behind the speakers. And so you have absolutely no idea what's going on out in the house. So there's no way you can mix live knowing what's going on. So I popped in my IEMs. I set level in sound check so I could get everything right. I was kind of going out in front of the speakers and coming back so I could get levels correct. But then once that was done, I just had to trust my IEMs. And it was great because then I could hear detailed stuff. My ears are a mess too, so this allows me to keep volume low, but still hear a lot of detail, even in a really loud space. So I'm a big advocate for in-ear monitors. I think they're crazy, crazy, crazy good. Way more so than headphones. They drive me crazy after a while, and they're bigger to travel with and whatever. So I love these. So I recommend these Sennheisers. I think they're less than 100 US, and the quality is really good. And they're comfortable, they fit well. So I totally recommend these. So anyway, sorry, a bit of a fanboy moment. We appreciate your streams and find what you play very cool. Will you ever release your tracks on vinyl? Well, thank you. First of all, I appreciate that. Thank you for enjoying this stuff. That always feels good when people like what you do. I don't know about on vinyl. I was producing music and DJing for decades, up until 2018. And then I was getting restless and I wanted to do something new and creative. And, I wanted to basically combine production and DJing because I love both of them. So that was when I decided that I wanted to move into live performance, and more specifically to improvised live performance, because my whole goal from the beginning was that I wanted to produce music live in front of a crowd rather than just playing music, because I've been DJing forever, and for me that's playing music. I didn't want to write tracks ahead of time and then play them live, because for me, if I was just going to do that, I would just DJ, because it's way less gear to carry around. You have way more kind of, you've got all the music in the world to choose from, and you just bring a USB stick and headphones, and it's way easier. So for me, I didn't want to do that. I really wanted to specifically produce live in front of the crowd. So in about 2018, I started doing that. I slowed down my production. I started shifting over to really working with the gear that I had in my studio and getting some new gear and trying to figure out how I was going to do this live. That was when I was homebound for a little while because of my cancer treatment, and that helped as well because it gave me a bunch of time to get going on that. Then when I finally started to feel like I was getting somewhere and I was feeling better after my treatment finished was right when COVID started. And I was like, okay, well, cool. Now I've got another year to sit at home, so I'm just going to keep going on this. And so I really got into the improvised live performance hardware side of things and kind of developing what I wanted to do. And if you watch through my old videos, you'll see the evolution from, a couple of Elektron boxes to some Elektron boxes and some synths to different versions of that to starting into Modular, and you can kind of track my whole journey through my YouTube channel. Then when it came to production, to the question that you asked, when it came to production, I was producing music that I liked and that sounded like my old style and the way I was DJing, which was kind of similar to what I was playing live, but the tracks didn't sound live. And because I wasn't playing produced tracks live intentionally, I didn't want to, I couldn't play my tracks live. So I had this live improvised sound, and I couldn't figure out how to capture the feel of that live improvised sound in recordings and make it sound, because like when you start recording stuff, you want it to sound more perfect. So you start polishing and changing and editing and whatever, and then you kind of suck all the soul out of a live performance and you miss those imperfections that make the live performance dynamic and fun. And so I really struggled for a couple years and for a few years trying to figure out how to produce music that sounded like me when I played live, so that if somebody bought one of my tracks and really liked it and they decided to come to a show, they would hear the sound that they liked from the track that they bought. Even if they wouldn't hear that track, they would hear that sound. And so finding that combo was a bit of a struggle. And I feel like I've gotten to the point now where, you know, I've come up with some new ways to record and things like that. So I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm making sounds or making songs in a way that captures the live performance aspect. So I have a couple things that have been signed to different labels that are going to be coming out this year, before the end of the year, which will be amazing. Just recently had a seven track album signed by a German label called Diffuse Reality. And so that's going to come out later this year as well. So there's like, now there will be more stuff. Now, if any of those labels decide to put something out on vinyl, then yes, they would be available on vinyl. But it hasn't been that I haven't put stuff out on vinyl. It's been that I haven't put stuff out for a long time because I didn't want it to sound too produced. I wanted it to sound like a live performance. But you can't just record a live performance and put it out, because oftentimes out of context, it doesn't sound right, or the mix isn't exactly right or whatever. So trying to find that balance between making it sound correct and making it sound live was always a challenge. And so I think I've found my groove with that. So you'll be seeing a bunch of new stuff coming out. So hopefully you guys will grab all this stuff when it comes out so I can break out of those million tracks a week that show up out there. But anyway, let's see what else. Even the water in hotels is bad. I totally agree. Yeah, hotel, like especially in the US, hotel coffee is horrible. So being able to bring a coffee maker with me is absolutely key. So yes, bring coffee with you so you'll have better coffee. And that's why I always bring my tea as well, because usually the tea in hotels is either green tea, chamomile, or English breakfast. And I'm not a huge fan of any of those. I like mint, and so that's why I always bring my mint tea. But anyway, little window into my travel habits. What else? Tried out those Sennheiser IEMs since you mentioned them last week, and they seem pretty nice for 100-ish. Yeah, for the price, I think they're amazing. They sound really good for the price. I mean, yeah, you could spend $1,500 on IEMs and they probably sound better, but for $100, these are great. Let's see, totally makes sense. Gets what you mean. Want the live feel to feel live. Yeah, it's kind of like what we were talking about before with AI generated music. When you've got music that's generated by AI, it's going to sound perfect, right? Everything's going to be perfectly mixed and perfectly whatever. But because it sounds perfect, it doesn't sound human. It doesn't have any soul anymore. And I was joking with somebody recently. We were talking about one of my favorite terms to laugh at in music is lo-fi, because I'm old enough that lo-fi for me at one point in producing music just meant shitty gear, and you would get a lo-fi sound. So now that the gear, the DAW and your converters and your audio interfaces and your computer and everything, now that they all make everything so perfect and pristine, everybody has to find plugins and pedals and everything to slap on it to make it sound lo-fi, to make it sound shittier than it is. And so for me, I always think that that's really funny because that used to just mean shitty gear. And now it's like, it's a certain sound. And that's why, like, for example, in my modular case is super loud. Like when I'm saying, like, when nothing's playing, if you are listening on a sound system and there's audio connected and the fader is up from my system, but there's nothing playing, there's a lot of sound that's coming out of the sound system. And for me, I don't care. I'm not going to go in and try to clean that up because for me, that's part of the sound of my rig. It's a gritty lo-fi, if you want to call it, but it's a gritty sound. And if I had everything perfect and pristine, I would just need more saturators and distortion and things to mess it up and make it sound gritty again. So I prefer to get a lot of that in naturally by, overdriving things and doing that kind of stuff because I like that. I like the imperfection of that from a techno head perspective. I don't think it should be perfect. I think it is an imperfect music. It is a mechanical machine, industrial, futuristic, whatever. And so for me, I don't think it should be pristine and perfect. And this is my personal taste, but I like when things are imperfect. And that's why I like a lot of those artists that we were talking about before. I mean, if you listen to Schler or Quelza in particular, they use a lot of Foley in their techno production where they'll use that to add texture to things like sub basses. And it's really clever and really creative to give it this really interesting combination of technical and organic at the same time without having to like slap a lo-fi plugin on it. It's just really interesting ways to get to that same idea at the end of making things sound imperfect because it's an imperfect music, right? That's why for me, it doesn't matter if the sequence is perfect, the key is perfect, the melody's perfect, the audio's perfect, the processing's perfect. It just doesn't matter to me personally. I prefer the roughness of it and the grittiness of it. So anyway, Sauvage modules. Distortion is not an option. I gotta tell you, Sauvage Engineering, they make the best sounding distortions out there. Their stuff sounds so good for being something that could be so wild and out of control so easily. Their modules sound great. I'm a big fan of their stuff. I don't even have any of it, but I've heard it a lot and it sounds really great. So yeah, if you're looking for distortion, Sauvage Engineering, those guys are the shit. Let's see. Have you and some of the other YouTube creators based in the US considered doing a tour together? No, but we do, like when we go to events like Superbooth and stuff, we do hang out. I have played shows with a number of other people that are on YouTube. There's not, for example, Matthew does, EasyBot does his shows, the Modbang shows in Seattle and now also in Portland and Dayton. And I've played all of those, which is great. So I've played shows with him, which is not really a tour, but we've played together. I've played a lot of shows in Europe with Analog Kitchen. He throws a lot of events and I like to play his shows with him. I'm playing his event at ADE. And then I'm also playing another event at ADE, which is going to be really fun. That's kind of a collaborative, not quite store style. It's slightly different format, but it's multiple live acts playing at the same time or in different configurations. And I know that that's going to be the first time that I get to play with Dave Meck, who Dave and I have been friends for years, and we end up hanging out together a lot at these events. But this will be the first time we get to play a show together. So that one will be a ton of fun. And who else? I played a bunch with Alex 106, Alex from WMD, and Travarsi. And they're both on YouTube. So not really tours, but do get to play quite often with these guys, which is great. But yeah, it'd be fun. It's hard because When you mention playing with the people who are also on YouTube, first and foremost, there's not a lot of music, like electronic music, particularly techno, YouTube creators in the US. A lot of them are outside of the US. And also, there's a lot of them who aren't, they don't play a lot. So they don't tour, they're not out playing a lot. So it's like, if I can connect to a thing with them, it would be great. But then there's people like EasyBot, who he plays all the time, and I play all the time, and Analog Kitchen plays all the time, and Dave Mack plays all the time. So it's easier for us to connect and do shows because they're always out there. But there's a lot of other of these artists who are not playing shows out very often. And so it's harder to connect, and particularly to play anywhere other than a one-off show. So we could make that work sometime, but it would be difficult. So what else? Speaking of Fanboy Sauvage, yeah, they're good. Is Herbs and Stones Mousse any good? I don't know. I have not used it at all. I'm not the right person. Maybe somebody else in the comments can answer that, but I have no idea. Really enjoyed listening. Need to crash, so take care. Looking forward to your next stream. Thanks. Welcome, or thanks you for tuning in, and it's been good having you here. Thank you. Appreciate that. James, we need another Mod Bang Circle show in Seattle. I agree. Let's make that happen. EasyBot, if you're still on here, let's do another one. We were supposed to do something, weren't we? You had mentioned something that was going to be like around now, but that didn't happen. So yeah, at some point, let's do that soon. I would love to. Would love to get back out there to play. Seattle's fun. Yeah, but in the meantime, next shows, if there's anybody on here from New York, next show is a week from tonight. So next Saturday night in Brooklyn. So yes, next Saturday night in Brooklyn, definitely come to that. And then next month, I will be playing in Berlin the 17th and 19th, and maybe the 18th as well. No, sorry, 16th and 18th, and maybe the 17th, I think. I can't remember the dates exactly, but 2 and maybe 3 shows in Berlin next month, October. Then at ADE in Amsterdam, I'm playing 2 shows on the 22nd, on the Wednesday, and then a 3rd show tentatively, but I don't know the date of it yet. But I will let you guys know. That'll be all posted on my social media, particularly on Instagram. So if you're into that, if you're into coming to those shows, definitely do. Would love to see you there. Let's see what else. How is the techno scene in Denver these days? It's fantastic, actually. I kind of brag about it a lot. Although one of the things that makes me laugh a little bit is that I almost never play in Denver. Because the scene itself is much more, I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. It's a lot more about being part of the scene, and I travel a lot, so I'm not always at the shows and always hanging out with everybody. So it's kind of hard to keep your name fresh with everybody. So I was looking at my schedule the other day, and I think I've played in Berlin specifically as a city 5 times more shows this year than I've played in Denver. So the scene is great. I just don't play a lot. But the scene itself, there's a few clubs that are getting national touring headliners all the time. And then every Friday night, every Saturday night, there's at least 3 after hours that are completely full. So, and those after hours are great underground shows. It's not like the more commercial stuff that you'll see in the clubs. So it's good. The scene's very good. Very, very good. Are you getting a WMD Scorpion? I would love one, but I don't think so. I think they're pretty super high in demand, so I don't know that they would have one for me to get. But I have messed around with it a little. I think it's amazing. I don't know that it would make it into my live rig, but just because it's another one of those deep, a bit fiddly modules, but it sounds crazy good. I heard Alex 106 play with it at Superboot this year, and he did his whole intro with the Scorpion, sequencing different parameters with the Metron, and it just sounded amazing. It sounded so good. What else? Any tips on flying with modular equipment? Yes, take everything carry-on. That's my big tip. I never check my modular, ever, ever, ever. I'm too freaked out by it. I've had too many bad experiences flying. I don't want to have my modular underneath the plane or on a different plane or missing the plane. So yeah, my biggest tip is take it as carry-on. And because I do that, because I travel with my modular as a carry-on, what that does is it forces me to stick to a specific size. So because I have a case that folds over, I can go up to 14U now. It was 12U before, but I can go up to 14U, but it can't be any wider than 84 HP in order to fit into a rolling carry-on bag. 104s are carry-on size if you use it as your carry-on, but then you have to carry it like on your shoulder, which gets to be a lot running through airports and it's really heavy. So I like to put it into a roller. So that means 84 HP is the biggest size I can do. And like my new case that I'm getting on Monday will be 14U84. And so I'll be able to get plenty of modules in there, but it's still a size where I can take it as carry-on, which it has to be for me. That's my big thing. But other than that, I mean, that's really the only thing. There's nothing particularly complicated about flying with modular. I love to, because I use the Oxy One, I have the pipe module in my case. So it allows me to leave everything patched. So then when I roll up to a case, roll up to a show, I just open my case, plug in one HDMI cable, and everything is already patched and sequenced. So I don't have to individually patch for my sequencer into my case. So that's another one. But yeah, other than that, yeah, my big thing is always travel with your stuff carry on, no matter what. Yeah, that's the big thing. So anyway, what else? Unknown artist off to bed. Sweet. Have a good one. Thanks for tuning in. And yeah, so what other questions you guys have? Anything else? I'm trying to think if I have anything that I was supposed to talk about here. Let's see. Don't think so. Yeah. Any other travel tips you guys want? That's the other fun part. But yeah, traveling with gear is interesting. I did find out, I actually got an interesting bit of insight into airport security when I traveled on my last trip when I went to Knobcon. So almost every time, even though I have TSA pre-check, so I don't have to take anything out of my bags, almost every time my backpack gets flagged for secondary checking. Not my roller that has my whole modular in it, all patched and cables and wires and whatever, but my backpack that has controller, cables, Digitact, black box, drop, all of that stuff inside my backpack. And the guy at secondary security told me why this time, which I had never heard why. He said, because you have so many different electronics in one bag, the person checking on the screen runs out of time because they have a certain amount of time that they have to check the bag in order to keep the line moving quickly. So when they run out of time and they can't check everything, they flag it to go to secondary screening so that somebody else can take additional time to go through it. So it wasn't the fact that it was like a modular that looks like a bomb. It was the fact that there was such a density of electronics that they just ran out of time. So they needed to look through it. They needed to have somebody else look through it. So that was interesting. I always wondered why my modular never got flagged, but my backpack did. And that was what he explained to me. So that was your other tip about flying with hardware modular. Let's see. Does static from hands mess up the exposed motherboards and Eurorack modules? I don't think so. Maybe somebody else can answer that, but I've never had an issue with that. I mean, there are, the one thing that you can see that you get issues with sometimes is if your modular case has cheap power supplies, you can get a lot of noise from your from the power of modules and cables crossing over each other and whatever. One of the things that I really love about the Morph modular cases that I have is their power management is really clean. It sounds really good. And so it kind of takes any of that extra noise that's kind of the undesirable kind of feedback noise, takes that out. But yeah, other than that, I don't think static, unless, I don't know, if there's somebody else on here that's got something, let me know. Hey, Art, what's going on? Welcome, welcome. So let's see, do you think Oxy One MK2 is a good controller for just playing in the box? 100% dot, totally. So when I traveled, so about half my travels for gigs, well, actually maybe a third of my travels for gigs and about two-thirds of my travels for my day job. When I travel with my day job, because I need to always bring my computer with me anyway for work, I bring the Oxy One. And so I bring Oxy One and my in-ears, and I plug these into my computer so I don't get latency from like AirPods. And I'll just plug the Oxy One in, and I have a template set up in Ableton in my computer, which is basically like a Groovebox template for like kind of just jamming with the Oxy. So I already have everything mapped by channel and different sequencers and, you know, drums mapped to drum rack and all that stuff. So I can just plug it in, open up my computer, and then I use the Oxy to sequence there. And if I come up with something cool that I like, I can record it in my DAW, and then I can take that recording when I play live, load it into the black box, and then I've got loops that I can use in the black box that I made in the DAW. So yeah, it's fun because like in the DAW, you can use it to obviously to sequence way better than the sequencers in Ableton, but you also get the same kind of hands-on thing. So your workflow is the same as what you're used to in Live Performance Rig, but you're just using the computer as different sound sources instead of modular. So yeah, it's fun. I love it. I use it that way all the time. It's great. I still have my my MK1 Oxy One that I have connected to Ableton here in my studio, just to be able to just quickly pop stuff in there as well. So let's see, do you still use Octatrack or did you get rid of it? I actually did get rid of it. And it was only because I wasn't using it very much. I'm probably gonna get another one at some point just because I love the Octatrack, but I wasn't using it very much. I wasn't traveling with it anymore because my setup kind of changed and I didn't need it anymore. So I was able to save not taking that big box with me. And so, yeah, I did end up getting rid of it because somebody offered me a wild deal. I traded it straight across for an OPXY. So basically an Octatrack that was worth $1,300 for an OPXY that was worth $2,100. So because the deal was so good, I took it because I knew I could always get another Octatrack. And I didn't want to buy an OPXY because they were too expensive. And so getting it for that value for a piece of gear I wasn't using that was sitting on the shelf was a good deal for me. So I swapped those out. So I do not still have my Octatrack, but I will get another one at some point. We'll see. What do you think of the Opal software? I think it's great. When you're working in the box, are there any Max devices that you enjoy working with? So Opal's great if you're going to use a sequencer in the box. I think Opal's really good for that because it feels very much like an Elektron. So I like that it's like a software version of the Elektron sequencer. So yes, very cool and totally worth the money. It's one of those third-party plugins that I would totally, completely recommend to people. As far as Max for live devices, I don't know. Let me just pull up and see what I've been using a lot lately. So one Max for live device that I like is a morphing filter that's called Slink. I don't know if you've ever used that, but Slink is very cool if you want just like a single plug-in modulator for things, just because of how cool it is and how the things that you can adjust with it. But let's see here in my favorites, if there's any that I use. I mean, I use so many just like stock plugins. There's so little that that I use, even Max for Live. I mean, there are some. Let's see, OTT. Yeah, Slink is great. Roar is also another cool new one, or newer one. Actually, there's one that I snoozed on for a while that that now I use a lot. That is, it's an Ableton stock plugin that's called Corpus. If you're looking for a way to, what I love to use it for is download a commercial sample pack that you buy off of Splice or whatever, Splice. Take those samples, load the sample just by itself into your track to use as something, and put Corpus on that track. And the way that it adds harmonics to it, you can totally morph and change the sound. It's like having an additive synth and a frequency shifter in the same thing. Like, it's really, really cool to just like totally mess up a sample. So if you want to really quickly make a sample your own, instead of just like slapping a sample in there, just like fresh out of the pack, use something like Corpus, and it's yeah, that's a great one. I have a lot of fun with that one. But yeah, Slink is one of the favorites. And then as far as like synth plugins, I use the kind of standard, again, Ableton ones. And then I also have the V collection from Arturia, just because I like all the classic synths, like the 2600 and the CS80 and all those. And then Diva, I use a lot for analog sounding stuff in the box. Yeah, and then Serum and Pigments kind of for everything else. I also have, oh shit, what is it called? I can't remember. Let me see if I can find it here, and I will let you know. Yeah, I don't have it anymore. Anyway, yeah, and then as far as other plugins, I like the Soundtoys plugins for things like distortion and reverbs and stuff like that. That stuff it's all really cool. And then I have to tell you, and this is going to sound like I'm sponsored by these guys because I'm going to hype it up so bad, but I was so blown away. I downloaded the free trial the other day of this new mastering plugin from David Guetta and Nicky Romero that's called Faster Master. And the plugin costs $65. And I used it to master some samples just to hear how it would sound. And then I slapped it on a couple of like live recordings to hear how it sounded. I was blown away at the quality. And I've tried a lot of these mastering plugins, especially the AI ones, and none of them sound good. And I'm not a big fan of like the SoundCloud mastering or Lander or any of those. I think they all sound bad. I've never found one that I liked. This Faster Master one, I was shocked at how good it sounded. I fully expected it was going to suck, and I was shocked at how good it sounded, so much so that I bought it. So if you want a way to just kind of slap a quick master on a track to test it out in a DJ set, or slap a quick master on a track to submit it to a label, because the label will often want to pre-master anyway and have their mastering engineer master it in the long run, but they want to hear kind of what it's going to sound like. So to use a plugin like Faster Master and just slap that on there, I was blown away by how good it sounds. So give it a try. There's a 2-week trial that you can do. It's, I think the name of the website for it is Mastering the Mix is the name of the company that made it. And yeah, shockingly good, like way better than I expected it was going to be. So that's my hot tip for a plugin here as a Hardware Live guy. So let's see what else. Have you heard Behringer Edge? Good analog sound for drums. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's that's the DFAM knockoff, right? So yeah. But that goes into the whole Behringer debate. Is it a good thing? One of the things I'm this kind of like weird middle of the road, middle ground person about Behringer stuff. I don't think they're all evil, and I don't think they're all good. I think device by device. I don't like when they knock off devices that are currently on the market. And I think that harms other companies, particularly Modular. There's a lot of small mom and pop modular companies that are still selling things on the market, and then Behringer knocks them off at half the price. And I'm not a fan of that. I think that that's not okay. I want to try to support people that have these passion projects or whatever. Now, on the flip side, I love the fact that Behringer found a way to make a lot of classic synths that are no longer available new, available for people who could never afford the exorbitant price that these retro synths cost on the secondary market. So like the RD9, I think is a fantastic sounding 909 knockoff drum machine. I had one for a while, compared it to an actual 909, and it's uncanny how good it sounds comparatively. Not perfect, but at that price, we can't beat it. So their 909, their 808, I think are great. I'm also a big fan of their SH101 knockoff, because I think it sounds exactly the same as the original SH101 at a fraction of the cost. So like, I have an SH101 because I love it, because it's vintage and it's a collector's thing for me. But I think if you want the SH101 sound and workflow, which I love the layout and workflow of the SH101, you can get that in a Behringer, and it's great. And I love the fact that they make that stuff available for people. So as far as Behringer goes, I like when they do it with retro stuff where they're not hurting anybody and they're making things accessible that are ridiculously expensive just because they're vintage. But I don't like when they knock off things that are still on the market. So things like the Edge and things like their MIDI controller they did recently, and a lot of their modular stuff, I'm not a fan of that. So anyway, that's my soapbox about Behringer. Let's see. Have you experimented with any of the Metric Halo make-believe plugins? I have not at all. CG2 and Mixhead for mastering. No, I have not tried those at all. Normally, I'm not a fan of like AI all-in-one mastering plugins. Like I said, I've never found one that I liked, but Faster Master shocked me. Super easy interface, really easy to use, but still with a lot of control. And what I love about it is it will give you a suggested master, but then it gives you a whole bunch of different customized presets that are customized to your track that it analyzed, and you can go through and you can get different sound vibes if you're looking for something else. And you can also drag in reference tracks, and then you can master to the sound of the reference tracks. So like the EQ setting, is it low end heavy, high end heavy? Is it an airy sound? Does it have a mid cut? Does it have a mid boost? And it'll take that, it'll take those reference tracks, and it'll use that as part of the learning for the AI to master your track as well as listening to yours. So it's actually really, really cool. I was very surprised at how good it is. So definitely check it out. The math behind Metric Halo's products is beyond anything I can imagine. Yeah, I can't. All of this stuff is, I always joke with my friends that are in the hardware world that make gear, like the guys at Board Brain or WMD or whatever that I'm friends with. I always tell them, like, I don't understand how you guys do what you do. Like Manuel from Oxy all the time, like that makes me, like, blows me away. I don't know how they do what they do, but yeah, it's crazy. No AI in those plugins. Oh, so are they more like Ozone kind of thing? That's what I always use for mastering. So I have a mastering chain of mostly Ableton stock plugins, but then I use Ozone for certain things as well. So yeah, as far as like mastering, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can go. And I've got, I kind of have that to where I like it. But this Faster Master thing is analyze 20 seconds of the track and it's done. And anytime I had ever used anything like that in the past, it sounded horrible. And this one was, again, surprisingly way better than I ever expected it was going to be. So definitely worth checking it out, and it's free. So there's a 2-week free trial. So definitely jump in and give it a try. What else? Any other questions about live, travel, plugins, DAWs, hardware, coffee, any of that stuff? I want to make sure we get everything in this Ask Me Anything. Ask me anything. Throw it out there, and I'm an open book. So ask whatever you want so we can get all the info out there. Oops. Missing, there we go. All right, here we are back again. Did I miss something? All right. So anyway, anything else? Any other questions? Have you ever tried Viper VST, Virus TI emulator? I have not. I've heard about it, and I have a lot of friends that really like that, but I have not tried it. But Virus is cool, so if it's a Virus emulator, that's very cool as well. Have you thought of looping in your setup? Live looping? Not really, because it's not really my style of play. And I mean, I have to say, most of what I'm doing is sequencer based, so I can loop in the sequencer already. So audio looping is less important for me. It would be more important if I was playing stuff on keys, for example, and I wanted to play a thing and have it loop and then keep playing within the track. But because I'm not, a lot of what I'm doing in the sequencer very much acts like a looper. And then if I wanted to do something with, say, modulation or movement and have that loop, I have in my case, I used the Shachmat Griffin's Claws. So it's a CV recorder. So I can patch that into something and I can record a thing and then it will loop. So it'll set a certain length of loop and it will loop like that. So I can already loop modulation, and then my sequencer kind of already acts like a looper. So having an audio looper isn't really necessary as part of my workflow. But again, if I was singing or playing, acoustic instruments like guitar or whatever, or if I was playing keys, then having a looper would be more important. But for me, it's not. It's not necessary in the performance that I have. BLT or BLTA, is that a sandwich question for me? If that's a sandwich question for me, BLTA. I'm an avocado fanatic, so I just had a bunch of avocado last night. Yes, BLTA, if that's a sandwich question. If not, be more clear. But if it is, that's the answer. Any standout projects that you worked on lately? Kind of. I mean, there's a project that I'm working on now that is amazing. I don't know if you're talking about music or gear, but there's a gear project that I'm working on right now that is gonna change the world. But I can't say anything about it. Beautiful thing about NDAs. So yeah, but you'll see. You'll see when it comes out. But yeah, and then as far as other projects, like music-wise, yeah, no, nothing that's like really different and unique, except for so I guess I should take that back. Yes, there is one, which is the show that I'm doing next Saturday night in New York, is really super interesting. So the group that's putting it on, they do these events that are a combination of visual arts and music and stuff. And so they had a bunch of visual artists that were going to be doing this. So they let me choose who I wanted to do the visuals for my improvised live performance. So I went through the artist and I found one that I really loved that kind of jumped out at me, and you can see it on my Instagram. There's a bit of a sample from what she does, but she is a completely non-AI digital artist who creates these digital images, and she does a bunch of the visuals for Anima. So if you've seen any of Anima's stuff at like the Sphere in Las Vegas or at Universe in Ibiza this summer, a lot of the big like kind of robot / humanoid things, she did a bunch of that animation and that artwork. So she's doing a completely new original video presentation for the show in Brooklyn on Saturday, and I'm basically live scoring it with improvised live techno. So that for me is one of the more interesting things I've worked on in a while. The whole event is themed on, if you're familiar with there's a painting that is called, what is it called? The Garden of Good and Evil. I think it's a triptych painting. So it has like Eden and then the Garden of Earthly Pleasures, I think. And that's the middle one. And then the other part of the triptych is Inferno, is hell. And so that's kind of the overall theme of what we're doing. So a bunch of the visual artists are in the good side, and then we're in the dark underworld side. And so it's going to be these kind of dystopic, organic, mechanical machine video with live techno scoring to it. So yes, that's the most interesting project that I'm working on right now, and I'm super excited for it. I was actually, last night I was looking for some samples because I have an idea that I want to take some kind of crazy sounding, like, you know, the Tibetan like throat singers that sing like the really, really, really super low sustained notes. I want to take some of those samples and chop them up and reverse them and do some crazy stuff with them so that I can have that be kind of underlying atmospheres to some of the techno improv stuff that I'm going to do, to kind of combine that mechanical and organic, like what the artist is going to be presenting. So yeah, it's a fun project to get stuff ready for. So if you're in Brooklyn next Saturday night, come to the show. There's information on my Instagram where you can get tickets if you're interested for it. So definitely check it out. What other hobbies or interests are you into? I love to travel. That's probably my favorite thing, which is why I love doing it for work and for music as well. But I love travel just for the sake of travel, because I love languages as well. So that's another thing. So I speak a couple languages, and I love to be able to travel to use the languages that I speak. And my day job is I'm in the restaurant industry, so I'm a food person. So love to cook, love to eat, love to go out to restaurants, love to try new stuff. I love to combine these things that I just said all together. So my favorite way to travel is to go to a new place that I've never been to before and go eat and drink whatever the thing from there. So like have the locals tell me where to go, what's the thing, what do you have to try? And so, yes, those are my things. I grew up in the mountains in Colorado, so I ski and snowboard a bit, but ski more than snowboard. I grew up ski racing all the way through high school and college. And let's see, what else? Family, love to do stuff with wife and kids, although the kids are grown now, so it's a little bit less of that. What else? Movies, also. I'm a Star Wars nerd, if that's another thing, but yeah. So yeah, those are the hobbies that I'm into besides music. Like music is like the big thing, but those are the things that I like to do besides music. And I guess the other thing too, that I don't know if it's a hobby or if it's just like a personality trait, but I love to learn things. So I'm constantly, watching things, whether it's YouTube or documentaries or reading books or reading things about stuff. Like I like to learn new stuff all the time, which is why this whole hardware modular gear world is fun for me, because there's never a shortage of anything to learn. So I always dig that stuff. So E16 question mark. What? Yeah, we already talked about that. I don't have one. I wish I did. Manuel, send me an E16. But yeah, it looks very super cool. I can't wait to try it. Is there a specific modular that doesn't exist today that you'd like to see created? Something in the realm, if there was something in the realm of possible. Yes, I would like to see something that would be a clock manager, and it doesn't have to be modular, but it could be, or it could be a desktop box that can, in an accurate way, that can translate clock signals from to and from MIDI, CV, Ableton Link, and the Pioneer DJ, whatever it's called, DJ Sync or whatever clock. Because I think if somebody made that box or that module, it would free up DJs to integrate seamlessly hardware into their live sets. And it would make DJ sets much more fun and much more interesting to watch without having to use a computer. So right now you can do that, but you have to be using like Tractor in a computer, and that computer is synced via MIDI to hardware boxes. And so the computer acts as the MIDI link. But to be able to not have a computer involved and just have either a box or a modular that would connect the Pioneer ecosystem, the Ableton Link clock system, DIN, MIDI, and CV. If you could have something that could link all of those things together accurately, I think that would be an amazing device. And then the other thing, and for anybody who knows me, you've heard me preach about this for a while, somebody needs to make a desktop performance mixer that is made for live performance. Whether it's probably not specifically modular, because there's a lot of modular mixers that are great, but something that is more for hardware boxes and combinations of desktop synths, groove boxes, pedals, whatever, and maybe modular too, but that's as like a secondary thing. But a standalone performance mixer. And I will say, before anybody starts chiming in that, what about this one? What about this one? What about this one? Nobody has made a performance mixer. And I wish somebody would, because it is the thing that is needed in the world of hardware performance, I think, more than anything else. It's a gaping hole in the market that somebody needs to step into and fill. So those are the things that need to be made, in my opinion. So let's see. Joining late. Good to have you. Great to see your big room set. Thank you. I had fun playing that big room set. I just got the audio of it, by the way, which I'm going to post. Do you still use Syntact? I do not. I actually sold the Syntact when the Digitact 2 came out, or sorry, Digiton 2 came out, because having a whole modular rig, it wasn't so important to me to have analog sounds in a groove box. I just wanted to have more voices in that same format. So went from the Digitact Digiton that had 4 voices or 4 tracks, 4 synths at once. Digitact had 8. Then Syntact came out and it had 12. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Then Digitact 2 came out with 16, Digiton 2 with 16, Tonverk now with basically 64, depending on how you use them. So like, it became less important for me. And like I was saying before, it's not a matter of good or bad. It's a matter of what do you need for your setup, for the type of music that you make. So I don't need those analog sounds because I've already got that taken care of in my modular setup. So I just wanted more voices. And so as soon as the Digiton 2 came out with 16 tracks, I was like, yeah, I don't need that anymore. So I got rid of it. But not because it was bad. It just I didn't need it in my workflow. Let's see. How do you deal with customs in the airports with different gear you bring along? Do you bring the invoices with them? I don't. Because everything's kind of plugged in and used and beat up and whatever. So it's not like I'm bringing something in a new box that's coming back. But who knows, with all this stupid new tariff stuff here in the US, they might try to stop me on the way back. But no, I don't. I don't even have invoices for most of what I have because a lot of it I traded with other people or bought, on Facebook Marketplace or whatever. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for sharing. You're welcome. I don't know what I shared, but you're welcome. Oh, it was the hobbies one. That's right. That was the question. How do you find balance with work, music, hobbies, and finding something new you might fixate on? So, I mean, I work as a consultant, so my schedule is really kind of hit or miss. So I might have, 6 weeks where I'm working constantly, and then I might have 6 weeks where I don't have any projects at all. And so being able to do music is great because I can fit it in between things. This desk I'm sitting at right now is actually my work desk, which happens to be in my studio. So oftentimes I'll be working if I'm, writing a budget or doing financial projections for somebody or whatever for a business, and my brain starts to hurt, I can just turn and mess around with my gear a little bit. So that helps a lot. I do a lot of my music stuff on the weekends, which also helps. And I always, when I travel for work, I have a lot of downtime because I'm either in the airport, on the plane, in a hotel or whatever. So I always try to bring some gear with me as well. Lately it's been the OPXY, which is pretty cool. It's really fun to take, just to mess around with. And like I said, I always bring the Oxy One, so that if I really want to actually make music that I'm going to use for something, I can just do that on my computer with the Oxy One. So that is that. But then as far as music and hobbies, I mean, music is my hobby really, but I've tried to create this life where all of the stuff is combined just naturally, right? So like I love to travel with my family and do music stuff and food stuff while I travel. So it's it kind of combines stuff all together. Like when I go to Berlin and Amsterdam next month, one of my sons is coming with me. So it's we get some family time and music time and travel time and all that. So try to put it all together. But I also, one of the things that works really well for me that doesn't necessarily work for everybody is I am not a person who needs a lot of sleep. I'm like a 5-hour a night sleeper. So it's good for me that once everybody goes to bed, I can keep doing music stuff until late into the night and then still be up really early in the morning to do all my work stuff. So anyway, that's that stuff. What else? Oh yeah, that Pioneer clock ecosystem is trash. Actually, it's really good. It works really well. It just doesn't integrate with anything that's not Pioneer. The only way, if you wanted to link a Pioneer deck with regular hardware, you either have to have a V10 mixer, and that MIDI connection in the V10 sucks. So that's not even going to work. So you need to have either the SP16 that they came out with a few years ago, or their whatever the one is that's the sampler with the pads that looks like a CDJ. Both of those have the DJ Link connection and MIDI. But if you don't want to carry a big giant piece of gear just to do the MIDI sync, then having this little box that I was talking about, if you could have something that could use the Pioneer DJ Link, Ableton Link, CV clock, and MIDI clock all in one thing, kind of like an ERM multi-clock, but adding in the Pioneer Link and the Ableton Link. That's what I want. Somebody make that. If you're watching, make that. Somebody needs to make it. What else? Any thoughts on the Elektron Tonverk? Yes. I already talked about a bunch of those. For some reason, it doesn't seem too exciting for me. So it's honestly, like I mentioned before, it's if it's not something that you think you'll use, right? That you'll bring into your workflow, then it's not going to seem that exciting. But as soon as I watched EasyBot's stream the other day, because I had seen spec sheets and whatever, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, that's cool. But as soon as I saw his stream, there was a bunch of things that actually he didn't do with it, but I was like, oh man, I would totally do that, or I would totally do that, because our styles are different, our workflows are different, but he's going to use it a different way that I'm going to use it. But one of the things that's cool about the Toneberg, and it's kind of like the same thing in a different way that's cool about the Octatrack, is that there's not just one way to use it. You can see that they're starting to stretch into this, into that Octatrack world of there's not just one workflow. You can create a way you want this to work. You can route things in a different way and modulate them in a different way, which may be totally different from somebody else. Like for me, the most important things I saw in there were the buses and the send tracks. The sub tracks for me is massive, and having 4 outputs is massive. So you combine all those things together, and I'm like, oh, cool. And it's a multi-sampler, so I can get all kinds of cool stuff into it in a really interesting way that makes it act like a synth and not a sampler, because I'm not a sampler fan. So for me, there's a lot of cool things about it, but they're probably not going to be the same cool things that would be for you or for Matthew or for somebody else. So like, you just have to find the things that are going to be the best for you. And maybe it doesn't fit. Like I said, for example, I got rid of my Syntact because it didn't fit anymore. Not that it was bad. It didn't get any worse. It's still an amazing box if that's what you're looking for. It wasn't what I was looking for anymore, so I got rid of it, right? So that's kind of the way I am with gear. If I'm not using it, if it's not in my rig, I'm going to sell it. Unless I have some emotional attachment to it, like the analog rhythm, that'll stay forever. But if something comes along, not that's better, but that is a better fit for my workflow, then I won't use it. So for example, the reason why I did that trade for my Octatrack is I just wasn't using it anymore. It's not that it's not great, it's amazing. And I'm sure I'll buy another one at some point. But the performance effects that I needed, I was able to get from the Meta in my Modular, and the time stretched sample playback that I needed, I was able to get from the 1010 Black Box. So I was able to scale down and get the same needs out of different things, where if I needed to do live looping, sample chopping, any of that stuff, I would need the Octatrack. So I would need to pull it back into my setup, but I'm not using that, so it wasn't a deal breaker for me, so that's why I ended up getting rid of it. So anyway, that's awesome. What's awesome? What did I say? That was awesome. Let's see. Yeah, I own a V10 and never used the MIDI out. It's really bad. Yeah, it's horrible. It's like, I don't even know why it has MIDI, because it doesn't sync right, and it's such a dumb thing. But yeah, but the V10 mixer is amazing. I want somebody to make a scaled down version of that for hardware live performers, so you don't have to carry around a 40-pound brick to play shows. But yeah, the V10's awesome. For me, the V10 is the best live performance mixer that there is. It's too bad it's huge and heavy and expensive, but it has some features on it that I think are really, really cool that other mixers don't have. So anyway, Christopher, I fell asleep listening to the nice chat, woke up now, need sleep. Have a good night. Sleep well. 5 hours of sleep, yeah, that'd be coffee. Actually, it's not. Coffee doesn't keep me awake at all. And I think it's just because I've drank so much of it my whole life that I'm just kind of immune to the caffeine. It doesn't wake me up or keep me awake. It's just something that I like the flavor of and just kind of go on. I've always been a 5 hour night sleeper. And that's just like since I was a kid. And then for years, I worked for Club Med resorts where you only get about 5 hours a night of sleep. And then I just kind of kept going. It has always been my routine. So it lends itself to being able to have a good work-life balance, because your life can be at night after everybody else goes to sleep and you don't miss out on anything. So anyway, any other questions? What else you got for me? Anything else in this Ask Me Anything, or did you ask everything already? Let me know. If there's something you didn't ask, now's the moment before we call it a night, before I go get some food. All right. Well, it seems like that's it then. But thank you guys. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for all the people that jumped on. We had a whole ton of people on here, and thank you guys for the questions. I appreciate it. If you've got more, just pop them in the comments from the video, and I always try to answer those. So if there's something in there that something you didn't get a chance to ask here, just pop it down there. But oh, here's one more. What's the retro or niche piece of music or tech you think deserves more love? And why? I mean, music, retro or niche music that I think deserves more love is like the industrial sound from the late 80s, early 90s. I think it deserves more love today. It should be played in DJ sets today and as an influence on more of our music, whether that's Nitzareb or Front 242 or Frontline Assembly or Nine Inch Nails or Ministry or any of those guys. They were fantastic. But as far as tech, I don't know. I think it all gets plenty of attention. Nothing out there that's like a sleeper that nobody knows about, I don't think. I think it's all, I think we talk about it a ton. But yeah, I guess that's it. Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. I really appreciate all you guys hanging out and chatting, and that so many of you jumped in. And I look forward to seeing you at one of those shows that I mentioned. Otherwise, I'm going to try to jump on and do some of these, over these next few weeks as well, even though I've got a whole bunch of travel in there, but I'll try to fit some more of these in. So thank you guys very much, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend and have tons of fun making lots of great music. And yeah, I'll see you again soon. Take care. Peace.